This is City News, CIWW 1310 AM Ottawa and CJET 1011 FM, Smiths Falls and the Valley. City News time, 9 o'clock.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 27th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 20. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. City officials are gathering to unveil their plan for Canada Day on Friday. Now, City News will carry the briefing this morning live for you during the Rob Snow Show. That's expected to start in about a half an hour from now at 9:30. We're expecting to hear from the mayor, the head of protective services, the interim police chief as well. With the story, here is City News reporter Chris Curries.
The July 1st celebrations moved away from Parliament Hill this year due to construction, so they're just a bit farther west at LeBreton, where police have already set up a motor vehicle exclusion zone from Booth in the west to Colonel By in the east and Laurier to the south. That goes into effect Wednesday morning and runs until Monday. That's the first step that Ottawa police have taken to ensure a safe celebration, since they're also expecting some planned protests on Friday in the vein of the Freedom Convoy. What else can be expected from Ottawa Police? We'll find out more during a media briefing later this morning that will include the interim police chief, city officials, and Mayor Watson. OPS has already requested 500 additional units from the RCMP be granted special constable status and say they are applying lessons learned from past events. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 9:01. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
After some very warm temperatures yesterday, it will become less humid today. Still a chance, though, of some showers or thunderstorms. The high about 23 degrees. The average high is 25. Tonight, mainly cloudy and 12. And tomorrow, sunshine and seasonal 25 degrees. For today, the high 23.
Right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees. It's 20 in Smiths Falls. Ukrainian President Zelensky addressed G7 leaders virtually at their summit in Germany this morning as they discussed the threat to global stability posed by Russia's invasion.
The conflict has been a running theme through Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's meetings with world leaders in Germany, as well as last week at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda. Trudeau spoke to the Ukrainian president on the first day of the G7 summit yesterday to inquire what he needs from the leaders. According to Volodymyr Zelensky's Twitter account, the two spoke about increasing defense support for the embattled country. Yesterday, Canada promised to spend $50 million to prevent Ukrainian grain from going to waste. Emily Joveski, The Canadian Press.
Now, the European Union is taking steps to protect natural gas supplies. Members continue to reduce their reliance on Russia. EU countries have agreed that all natural gas storage in the 27-nation bloc should be topped up to at least 80% capacity for next winter, 90% before winter 2023. Europe is trying to slash the use of Russian energy amid the Kremlin's war in Ukraine. Before the war, the bloc got about 40% of its gas from Russia. City News time, 9:03. The co-author of a new study says certain magic occurred in Canada as people rallied around COVID-19 public health measures. The doctor in charge says Canada used community outreach efforts and showed the world high vaccine engagement is possible using the right strategy. The study, led by a team of Ontario researchers, suggests Canada's response to the COVID pandemic compared well to other countries like the United States, France, and Germany. Canada's rate of virus-related deaths and infection, the lowest among nearly a dozen of the countries that were analyzed. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, it's a short week for a lot of people, but there won't be a shortage of big news stories to cover. And that's what we like to do around here. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Well, coming up in this hour of the program, in less than a half an hour from now, major news conference. We're going to carry it live. It's about the preparations for Canada Day and the protests that are expected to be taking place. It's a city briefing, and anyone of authority at City Hall is going to be there, it seems. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, interim Ottawa Police Chief Steve Bell, Kim Ayotte, the General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services, Councillor Eli L. Shantiri chairs the Ottawa Police Services Board. They have a meeting later today. Inspector Francois Daou is Executive Officer, Ottawa Police Service. Pat Scrimger, Director, Transit Customer Systems and Planning. Phil Landry, Director of Transit Services. So all of this is supposed to begin at 9:30. As I said, when it begins, we will bring it to you as we have been reporting for a few weeks now. These are the first in-person Canada Day events since 2019, since before the pandemic, and it's not all about fireworks. There will be protests, and some people associated with the Freedom Convoy are going to be in the capital city June 30th and July 1st, airing whatever grievances they happen to have, whether that's vaccine mandates or the idea that the country is under the control of the World Economic Forum, whatever it happens to be. And also, as we've been reporting for several weeks, there is some kind of plan to make this a summer of protests. It's not going to be just Canada Day, but a summer of protests that lasts until Labor Day. So protests, counter-protests. Just how much of it will even get close to Parliament Hill is anyone's guess. The city has already released its own traffic plan. As was done for the Rolling Thunder event, there's going to be what the city calls a motor vehicle control zone, although the city insists roads are not closed. Just access is being controlled. For residents and business traffic, the city maintains its business as usual. Same for pedestrians, cyclists, riders on public transit. But no motor vehicles can take part in any protest or demonstration or rally. And there are going to be barricades and heavy equipment and lots of police at access points to the motor vehicle control zone, which basically goes from Booth Street in the west, and then you kind of have Dalhousie, Nicholas Street down in the Market, Sandy Hill area, Wellington to Laurier, north-south, and it also includes the Chaudière Crossing and the Portage Bridge. And right now, that's supposed to be, in effect, that motor vehicle control zone until July 4th, which is a week from today. So it would be a Friday and then all weekend long kind of thing, and I guess then come down Monday morning. So I'm sure the local news media will have plenty of questions about what the authorities are anticipating and what the plan is to deal with everything. So again, we'll bring that to you when it begins here on City News. To set things up just before the briefing, it will be a great pleasure to be joined by the city councillor for Somerset Ward, down in the thick of it again. Candidate for mayor in this fall's municipal election, Councillor Catherine McKenney. It's their residents always impacted the most, not just by Canada Day, but this time around by Canada Day protests. So that's coming up in just a few minutes' time. Also on the show this morning, a weekly look at what's making news internationally. We'll do that with the help of Jeffrey Johnston, international affairs columnist, Kingston Whig Standard. It was a weekend of protest across the United States and across Canada, for that matter. People protesting the Supreme Court ruling that set aside Roe v. Wade. And if you watched any of the coverage of that over the weekend on television, now one of the fears is, in some quarters, that right now it's abortion, what's next? With Justice Clarence Thomas indicating the United States Supreme Court might want to revisit issues like same-sex marriage or access to contraception. So we'll talk about that with Jeffrey. There's a G7 meeting happening in Germany. Obviously, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, top of mind, with Ukrainian President Zelensky pleading for tougher sanctions on Russia, better air defenses, but there's also a $600 billion U.S. plan to counter China and China's Belt and Road Initiative. Meantime, you have reports this morning, this broke about an hour ago now, that NATO, and we're part of NATO, that NATO plans to massively increase what's known as its high readiness force to 300,000. This is ahead of a NATO summit scheduled to take place in Madrid later this week. That high readiness force currently numbers 40,000 right now, being expanded to 300,000. Early reports indicate that NATO would expand troop deployments across the member countries that are closest to Russia. And it would also be renamed and called the Allied Reaction Force. Allied Reaction Force, 300,000. So for Canada, we have what's called Operation Reassurance. Almost 1,400 Canadian Armed Forces members deployed as part of that, our largest military operation right now. And it sounds like it might get larger. Most of those forces based out of Latvia. We've been there since 2014. So that is a big developing news story. And also, while the world's attention is centered on the conflict, the war in Ukraine, terrible famine affecting almost 20 million people across the Horn of Africa. And Jeffrey has been laser focused, writing columns about that for the Whig Standard. So we'll have much to discuss this morning. And as we always do between 10 and 11 o'clock, it's the Talkback Hour. A chance for you to have your say on the biggest news stories out there. And one of them is the cost of living, the rising cost of living, inflation. See, the price of gas took another jump and is now back above $2 a liter. Most gas stations across the city now. The price of diesel, I don't know how people afford to drive a diesel-powered car. Around the corner here, diesel is going for $2.30 a liter. My goodness gracious. So, I'm going to talk about a gas tax holiday. You go for that? Lots of taxes on fuel. Consumption taxes, excise taxes, carbon taxes. For example, a driver here in Ontario on a liter of gasoline pays 10 cents a liter in excise tax. 11 cents a liter carbon tax. 14.7 cents a liter provincial fuel tax. 13% PST and 5% GST tax on tax. Meantime, all over Europe and all over the United States, and I have a list. It is a very, very long list. All over Europe, countries all across Europe, individual states across the United States, governments have suspended or reduced their gas taxes because they've come to the conclusion, those governments, that their people are having a hard time making ends meet, affording the basics: fuel, food, shelter. None of it's getting any cheaper. We're all living through this. So they've come to the conclusion people need a break. But not the Trudeau government. No plans for any relief on fuel taxes. It actually raised the carbon tax back in April and still claims you're getting all the money back and then some when you pay the carbon tax. U.S. President Joe Biden, he is begging oil companies, please pump more oil. You're not pumping enough oil. He's pleading with the U.S. Congress, please pass a gas tax holiday.
So let's be honest with one another. My message is simple. To the companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump, this is a time of war, global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you are paying for the product. Do it now.
Do it now.
Do it today.
Do it today.
Your customers, the American people, they need relief now.
No. Nothing like that from Mr. Trudeau, though. So I want to know this morning, 750-1310, would you support a gas tax holiday? Now, before you say, oh, what a dumb question, Rob Snow, I'll have a counter argument for you, ready to go. Because the economic purists are saying, no, don't do that. That's the last thing government should do if the fight is against inflation. There's an old line when it comes to fighting inflation that the only cure for high prices is high prices. And giving people more money only makes the inflation fight more difficult. So have your say on a gas tax holiday between 10 and 11 o'clock on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
We're encouraging people to rethink Dieppe, right? For the longest time in Canadian history, the Dieppe raid was seen as sort of a massacre. It was seen as a failure of operation. You can imagine us, Canadian soldiers, going to Europe, and it's the first big mission that we're allowed to take the lead on, right? General Criard is there. We're getting ready. 6,000 troops are ready. They're ready to take the town of Dieppe and start the process of taking back Europe. But of course, as we know, it was a massacre. About 5,000 were either wounded, taken prisoner, or killed. And so it was considered a failure from the Allied perspective. But over the course of the last 80 years, and you can imagine as things get declassified, that we're starting to learn that it was not only just a raid, it was actually an intelligence gathering. And the Canadians were able to, with their sacrifice, sort of lead the way to what became D-Day. So that's what we're asking Canadians to look. We have a lot of family members who were either part of Dieppe, who part of D-Day, who went to Juno Beach, who really sort of were part of that World War II effort. Almost most Canadians do have family. So we're asking people to sort of think and rethink what Dieppe actually means. So we're inviting students, because it's very much a student-led initiative, because we've got our partners, No Stone Left Alone and the Juno Beach Center. But we're asking them to really rethink what Dieppe is and what it meant to World War II.
And you're asking them to write letters. You know, what an interesting perspective, especially from students. You know, do you wonder what their perspective might be compared to how you've just described Dieppe and how that conversation has changed over the last 80 years?
I think that's what's going to be quite interesting. People from across the country and across the world, any expat Canadians can definitely join in. We've got 3 different places where you can send letters. On the East Coast, it's here in Ottawa, so at Beechwood. We've got our partners, No Stone Left Alone, out of Edmonton. And then the Juno Beach Center, they're celebrating Dieppe as well with a massive exhibition at the center in France. But we're encouraging, and all the information's on all 3 websites, so you don't need to look it up. But we're encouraging them just to write letters, and we're going to bring these letters to France, to the Dieppe Cemetery, as well as have a few of the remaining veterans receive these letters.
Yeah, and it goes beyond the soldiers themselves as well, right? Because the impact went beyond them. The impact went to their families, right? Their extended family. I mean, it's amazing how much of an impact it had, and I don't think we realize as a nation, that sort of trickle-down effect, right?
I think we have those big Canadian moments, right? We've got Vimy Ridge in World War I. We've got Passchendaele. We've got Juno Beach. But Dieppe really was this sort of very important moment in World War II.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Once more, a reminder, we will have live coverage when it begins of the City Briefing on Canada Day and the Canada Day protest. City Briefing at 9:30. We'll bring it to you here on City News. We're joined now by the City Councillor for Somerset Ward and candidate for mayor in this fall's municipal election, Councillor Catherine McKenney. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Rob.
Very nice to hear from you, Councillor. What do you want to hear this morning?
Well, Well, I've met with the acting chief, and we've had good discussion on what I feel needs to happen. And what I want to hear is, obviously my main concern is the safety of residents who live in the downtown where most of the activity will be taking place. So, how do we ensure that people in their homes, people who are out walking in their neighborhood, just getting around for the weekend, are kept safe? We also have, the major Canada Day event happening on the Breton Flats, which is also in the ward that I represent. So, there's, not likely to be any type of, I'll call it convoy activity at Le Breton Flats, but, we need to ensure, again, that, the residential neighborhoods around the War Museum as well, kind of Centertown West, are also on the radar of police and the radar of the organizers of Canada Day.
Okay, and how confident are you that those concerns have been addressed?
Mm-hmm. Again, I did talk to Acting Chief Bell, and he certainly was, not just sympathetic, but seemed very well prepared. The last Rolling Thunder that came through the city was, it was successful in the sense that they were able to roll through, but it left without causing any disturbance or anything to residents. So this will be different, though. This is a very different circumstance. It's Canada Day, so a lot of people we expect will come from other parts of the city into the downtown. That coupled with convoy sympathizers, activities is really the key concern, and how that, it's not as clear as a motorcycle convoy kind of rolling in and rolling out. So, I know that the preparations have been ongoing. The special events at the city, the police, RCMP. So at least unlike late January, early February, when there seemed to be no planning, there certainly is a plan in place. But I look forward to the update at 9:30 as well.
Okay, the vehicle patrol zone, the kind of the south end of that is Laurier. Mm-hmm. Is that satisfactory to you? Should it extend further south, do you think?
Mm-hmm. What I did convey to Chief Bell was that, with respect to that zone and, to Laurier, the last time I had requested that it go further south, that didn't happen last time either. What I'm being assured of is that they are prepared to roll out street closures as they see necessary. So if something is happening where, we see vehicles illegally parking, any type of occupation taking root, they will be able to go out, go further south, east, west, as necessary. And it's also important to remember, Rob, that Heritage Canada also plays a role in this, because they are responsible for the Canada Day activities, and their mapping of street, not necessarily closures, but local traffic only, no parking type of situations, does go further south, does go further west, of course, into Centertown West, does go further into Rideau Vanier. So, there is some type of control over, having at least vehicles come in. If people want to take the train or walk, everybody is able to get into the downtown, of course, but it's just not having the large vehicles or any vehicles that make it much easier to take route.
What is your opinion on people who want to go out and counter protest?
I understand that people are frustrated, and frustrated with kind of this ongoing protest, it's a huge cost to taxpayers, of course, and it's at the very least an inconvenience to residents. It makes people nervous. It stresses people. I have people who talk to me often who, are still very emotional about what happened in February. They still feel some of that trauma because they lived right there. So, I understand that, people are want to go out and show that, there is, kind of that counter support, if you will, that, to say we don't welcome this in the city. I'll be honest with you, my main concern is always the safety of residents. So any type of protest, counter-protest, I always, appeal for everyone to remember that people live where you're protesting. And, when you leave, people are left there. That's their homes. It's where they live. It's where they walk to the grocery store. So, I think that, while I understand it, certainly, I'm always, caution for the safety of residents who live there.
Okay. I would like to ask you about something else. On Friday, the news came down about Roe v. Wade in the United States, and there's certainly a lot of protests about that, but also the suggestion from one of the Supreme Court justices that other issues could be revisited. Not now it's abortion, but also access to contraceptives and marriage equality. What are your thoughts on that, Counselor, please?
Well, once the Supreme Court takes away a right, this is the first time the Supreme Court in the United States has actively removed rights from, in this case, women. Then, of course, the gates open. And we know that there is a rise today in homophobia, certainly transphobia. We're seeing it certainly south of the border, but we're seeing it up here as well. And that is always a fear and a valid fear, and I share it. That yes, next will be equal marriage, contraceptive rights. It won't end. If we don't stand up to what's happening south of the border, if we don't take note, we also, in Canada, are not immune to it. We have to, rights have got to be protected. And once conferred, we know they can be taken away now. So to me, Roe versus Wade, rolling it back was shocking, expected, but shocking. And absolutely, I'm hearing from people all the time, friends who are quite worried, and just to see or to understand what's happening to women in the States today is really quite upsetting.
Okay. Thank you for your time this morning. We'll let you watch this briefing. Thank you so much for your time, Counselor. Much appreciated. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob. Nice to chat with you.
Counselor McKenney. The briefing from the city about Canada Day and the protests that are planned, we'll bring that to you when it begins. This is City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 27th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 20 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Settling into their chairs right now, we'll take you to a briefing from the mayor and other city officials on the plan for Canada Day Friday. Main celebration this year just west of the Parliament block at LeBreton Flats due to the ongoing construction on the hill. We will take you live to that briefing very shortly. The councillor for Somerset Ward tells the Rob Snow Show their ward will be taking the brunt of any problems that could occur if protesters do descend on the capital for Canada Day. Catherine McKenney has met with the interim police chief outlining their main concern is safety. McKenney says there is a plan in place, though, to deal with groups of people celebrating as well as possible protesters. G7 meeting in Germany heard from Ukraine's president as they underscored a commitment to that country in the long haul. The group of 7 leaders finalizing plans to pursue a price cap on Russian oil, raise tariffs on Russian goods, and oppose other new sanctions. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
So again, we will bring this briefing to you when it begins, and it looks like they are just starting to assemble now. See, city briefing on plans for Canada Day, its impact on residents, the motor vehicle control zone, the plan for transit, the plan for traffic, the plan for policing, all of it. And so you will hear throughout this briefing from Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, the interim Ottawa Police Chief, Steve Bell. You have Kim Ayotte, General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services. That's kind of everything except the police. When you think about emergency and protective services, paramedics, fire, bylaw, those kinds of things. For example, if you have roads closed or traffic controlled in a big zone, you have to make sure that there are access routes for emergency responders in case of somebody needs the fire service or somebody needs paramedics. Certainly bylaws comes under emergency and protective services. So that's why he's there. Councillor Eli El-Shantiri chairs the Ottawa Police Services Board, as well Pat Scrimger, Transit Services, and Phil Landry of Traffic Services. Here's the Mayor of Ottawa.
2 long years of virtual celebrations, Canada Day 2022 is returning with live programming at LeBreton Flats in Ottawa and Place des Festivals Zibi in Gatineau. Residents and downtown businesses have expressed concerns, rightfully so, about possible protests on Canada Day and beyond. I want to assure everyone that the RCMP, Ottawa Police, Police de Gatineau, and the Parliamentary Protective Service are fully prepared to respond to any situation. The city's Emergency Operations Center will be mobilized to support the Ottawa Police Service and to coordinate city services throughout the long weekend. As I've said previously, this is the day for families and children and for everyone who wants to celebrate the diversity of languages and culture that make our country strong and free. There's a great lineup of shows and events on Friday, and we're looking forward to welcoming people from across the country, and in fact around the world, to enjoy our beautiful city and all that Ottawa has to offer. We won't be intimidated by any group that plans to disrupt the celebrations. We're prepared, and we will not tolerate any illegal activity by anyone. Residents and visitors have questions about transit services, road closures, crowd control, parking, and many other aspects of our preparations that we'll be answering today. Getting around downtown on Canada Day will be more complicated than usual this year. Residents are encouraged to plan ahead and to expect delays. Roads will be monitored in the days before and after July 1st, and extra street closures and restrictions will be in place on Canada Day. Maps and information are available on the city's website, ottawa.ca, and at octranspo.com and on the Canadian Heritage website. Public transit is your best option for getting around on Canada Day, and OC Transpo is offering no-charge special service for buses and trains. The Ottawa Police Service will provide up-to-date information, as will the City of Ottawa and our traffic operations through social media channels and the city's website. You've probably seen there are a lot of fake and false websites going up. You have to rely on the verified sites of Ottawa Police, OC Transpo, and the City of Ottawa. Now let's remember that Canada Day is a celebration of our history and our diversity. We honor the heritage, customs, and contributions of Indigenous peoples native to these lands as we reaffirm our commitment to equity, inclusion, and mutual respect. Celebrations and community events with family and friends will be taking place across the city, not just in the downtown. An Ottawa bylaw, Ottawa Police, and their officers will have additional resources to ensure safety of all of our communities. I know residents have concern, and we've organized this press conference with OPS and content experts to provide the information you need to have a safe and fun Canada Day. Our citizens and the residents of Canada are not going to be bullied, and they're not going to be dissuaded from coming down and celebrating this beautiful country we call Canada. So I encourage people to come and have a peaceful and joyous occasion in our nation's capital. And those people who are coming here to disrupt those wonderful celebrations will be dealt with the full force of the law. And they're not going to be warnings and second chances. If the law is broken, regardless who breaks it, there'll be consequences. This is a time to celebrate our great country. I now will hand things over to Kim Ayat, the General Manager, Emergency and Protective Services, who will respond for media questions following an update from Police Chief Steve Bell. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. For several weeks, the city's been fully engaged with the Ottawa Police Service and other partners to create and support a public safety plan that allows people throughout Ottawa to enjoy Canada Day festivities freely and safely. The city's Emergency Operations Center will be mobilized for the Canada Day long weekend and will be working directly with the Ottawa Police Service through the National Capital Regional Command Center. In the lead up to Canada Day, the city's Special Event Advisory Team is working with Canadian Heritage to ensure that their plans prioritize public safety for residents and visitors in our downtown core. Throughout these entities, all city services will work together to ensure seamless operations throughout the week. Regarding ticketing and towing, throughout the week and on Canada Day especially, City of Ottawa bylaw and regulatory services will have officers out on downtown streets ensuring parking regulations are observed by all. All vehicles found failing to observe non-stopping zones will be ticketed and towed. On all roads, residents and visitors should expect regular signed parking bylaws will be enforced. Regarding other bylaws, there are several large public outdoor events and several smaller ones. On Canada Day, in wards across Ottawa, the Special Event Advisory Teams is also working with organizers and other community celebrations and is providing support to ensure safety of Canada Day celebrations citywide. This includes enforcement of all bylaws regarding noise, litter, fireworks, parking, and stopping. The focus is on ensuring the impacts to residents are minimized so that they continue to enjoy these special activities and businesses that they normally would. In summary, if you're going downtown, please expect delays and be aware that regulations may change over the coming days. For the most current road conditions, visit the city's interactive traffic map. You are encouraged to visit the Canada Day page on the city's website, ottawa.ca, and follow the city's social media channels on Facebook and Twitter to remain up to date on traffic and regulatory adjustments over the weekend. Working together, I'm confident we can all enjoy a safe and fun Canada Day weekend. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Kim. I would now like to invite Interim Chief Steve Bell, Ottawa Police Service.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you as well, Mr. Mayor and Chair El-Shantiri. The Ottawa Police Service and its partners have built a comprehensive public safety plan to ensure all residents and visitors can celebrate Canada Day in the capital this week. This is expected to be a unique Canada Day with larger crowds and a larger event footprint. We've developed our plans in the shadow of the unlawful protests and Rolling Thunder event. We've been speaking with community members and businesses. We're very aware of the lingering trauma and the concern about what they're hearing after those events. We have been gathering intelligence, speaking with organizers, and observing open source online commentary. All of these factors have guided our planning. Given what we know and what we're faced with, we have taken an enhanced and extended posture that starts well before the 1st of July and extends well past to ensure we properly protect our city. This will be no small task, but together we will do everything within our power to keep our city and our residents safe. Our planning team have been hard at work for weeks. They have created an operational plan encompassing all levels of events, including the Canadian Heritage events at LeBreton Flats, downtown core festivities, as well as suburban and rural community events. And it also includes multiple lawful measures to manage demonstrations, protests, and threat of occupation by convoys to our city. We've developed options for multiple scenarios. We're reaching out to our policing partners to gather the resources necessary. Multiple police services, including the Ontario Provincial Police and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, are coming forward with support to our efforts. While we're receiving support to staff this plan, we've had to take unprecedented measures to ensure every officer is available and police member is deployed. I want to thank all of our police members, sworn and civilian, who will be working this event through the week. The priority for us is public safety. This includes the community, crowd, and officer safety measures. We have the people, the skills, and the equipment to ensure that these events are safe and peaceful. We expect there to be demonstrations. This is a right of all Canadians, and it will be protected. We will not, however, accept unlawful behavior, and we will not allow vehicle-based demonstrations in the motor vehicle control zone. Visitors and community members will see a significant police posture and presence throughout the city. This is necessary to support our ability to swiftly control the core for public safety reasons or support the city's vehicle control zone. We have multiple resources, including public order units, traffic teams, tow trucks, and quick response teams. We're prepared to take decisive and lawful action to deal with threats, occupation attempts, and other unlawful behavior that we observe. We've also been in regular contact with the Crown Attorney to ensure they understand our plans and are able to pursue criminal matters into the courts and support charges. We have authorities to enter public and private property on behalf of the property owners to remove anyone attempting to occupy or set up structures. Officers are currently being briefed and informed of their authorities under multiple federal, provincial, and municipal acts. Any enhanced security posture is a balancing act for the police service. We do not want to overshadow the festivities. We are also aware that there is a great deal of public interest in our public safety planning. We will ensure that residents are kept fully aware of all information we are able to provide. This has been a hard 2 years, and Canadians deserve the right to be able to recognize this day. Canada Day is important for this country. It gives us an opportunity to celebrate our country and reflect on how far we've come and how far we still need to go. Our police service and our partners will be here to ensure we can all celebrate Canada Day safely. To keep up with all important updates, I encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Ottawa Police. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief.
So, City of
I'll now
Ottawa
invite each media agency to ask their
availability
question and their
on the
preferred
preparations for
language regarding the
Canada Day.
offers.
We now expect a round of questions from the news media. You're listening to this on City News Ottawa.
Good morning. Thanks. The question would be for Chief Bell. Chief Bell, I wonder if you could tell me, when you say you spoke to organizers, do you mean organizers of the protests or organizers of the festivities, and what did they tell you in each case?
So what I can tell you is that we've had lots of conversations, both with organizers across the board. We're working very closely with City, and I'd like to thank Steve Kanalakis and all of his team for helping to support everything we've done through our planning phase. We've had really good conversations and connections with Heritage Canada, who's the main organizer of the downtown area. And we've had the opportunity through intelligence we've gathered and open source reviews that we've done to look at trying to make connection with the various different people who are indicating they may be coming to Ottawa to protest. So we've been very actively reaching out to everyone we can to make sure that we have the plans in place to manage anything that happens, and to make sure, most of all, that it's a safe and enjoyable day for everyone.
Thanks. And we know from some protests organizers that they intend to stay until after Labor Day or until up to Labor Day. So what are the extra resources you've asked for, and how long do you expect those resources to be in town?
So obviously won't get into numbers of resources that we're bringing in, but what I can tell you is we've had extremely good cooperation through Commissioner Lucky and Commissioner Creek of the RCMP and the OPP to help us properly staff what we need to do. As long as there are public safety concerns, we will have operations in effect to manage those, regardless of how long they last. So we're right now focused on making sure that we have a safe and enjoyable Canada Day, and then we will be in an operational mode to support our community safety until any sort of protest or demonstration is completed.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we will go to Michelle Allen at CBC.
Thank you. My question is, when OPS started clearing the original protest back in February, I remember Interim Chief Bell said that OPS was working to identify the people involved and hold them accountable. So multiple Freedom Convoy organizers like Tom Marazzo are now, meeting with MPs, planning additional protests in Ottawa this week. I'd like to know if OPS still maintains that they're going to hold people accountable, and I'd like to know what message this sends to residents by not charging people like Mr. Marazzo and allowing them to organize more protests.
So we actively followed up on many investigations, and I think at the culmination of the removal of the illegal occupation of our streets, the illegal protest, you saw us announce the number of charges around key leaders that we had laid. We continue to do work. We continue to do investigations. We continue to monitor those people we have charged and the activity of other people moving ahead. I can tell you we take organizing of anything unlawful very seriously, as you saw at the end of the convoy, and we'll continue to conduct those investigations, see them through the court, and conduct any other sort of investigations to hold people accountable if they're encouraging or allowing for illegal activity in our streets.
My follow-up is, in terms of building public trust, I remember it was said that there'd be some sort of investigation into what role, if any, OPS members played in the protest, and it's my understanding that's almost done. What are the results of that investigation, and how could it help instill confidence in police going forward into this next protest?
So I was very clear at the time about the fact I had zero tolerance for anyone internally who would support any sort of illegal activity. Those investigations are continuing. We are nearing the end of them, and we'll have announcements on the outcome of those shortly.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Chris Curries at City News Ottawa.
Hi, good morning. My first question is kind of what were the considerations behind the motor vehicle control zone as it currently is, and not including other nearby areas, for example, the Byward Market, considering we may be expecting hundreds or potentially thousands of protesters? Maybe you could also fill us in on a bit of a range of how many you're expecting.
I can start by answering that. Thanks, Chris. With regards to the control zones, the city is meeting with its partners and with police, and it's an ongoing discussion with regards to what could be added and what streets might be added. And I can tell you right now, we're currently having those discussions regarding other areas such as the market. So you'll have to stay tuned. Again, this is a planning exercise that we go through, and we hope to look at positive changes in the near future. I don't know if Chief Bell can add anything to that as well. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that, Kim. So just to build on that a bit, we continue to evaluate public safety as we move ahead. We continue, and we will right up through the event, continue to bring in intelligence and open source, as well as observe crowd dynamics. We've put a footprint in place for a motor vehicle control zone. That could change through the week, depending on the information that we're receiving. In terms of estimation of number of people coming, we expect hundreds of thousands of people to be down in the LeBreton Flats and in the downtown core to celebrate Canada Day. Because you have to remember, this whole planning is around the need for us to make sure and ensure there is a safe and festive environment down there. And that's the plans we've put in place to make sure that people can come down to our city core, enjoy the businesses that are down there, enjoy the festivities that are occurring, and celebrate what is the day to celebrate the country we live in.
And just to follow up, you mentioned, Interim Chief Bell, that you were talking to multiple organizers across the spectrum. Just on the community level, what do you think is the confidence level of residents that they will feel safe on Friday, just going about their day-to-day business, maybe going to Canada Day, maybe not?
So that's been a major consideration and a major thrust of all of the efforts that we've engaged in. We've actually had meetings with different affected community groups, whether it be Centertown or Byward Market or other areas that have been previously affected by the illegal occupation of our streets. So we take the harm and trauma that those members, those citizens experienced during the last event very close to our heart as we develop all of our planning. What I can tell you is we've developed very comprehensive plans that have a focus on public safety and specifically focus on the safety for the people that live in and around those areas, as well as the people coming down to attend the event. So we do have good plans in place. We're very confident with the plans, and we're encouraging people to come down and lawfully enjoy Canada Day.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mackenzie Gray at CTV National.
Hi, Chief. I think the residents of the city, many of them, the scars of the convoy are still fresh, and they heard a lot of the same things you've said today about having a plan and being able to execute, and that didn't happen in January and February. Why should people trust that it's going to be different this time than it was when the convoy first came here?
So you're absolutely right. There are deep scars and wounds held by the people that live in those areas. That's something that, as I said, we've very much focused on in terms of our planning effort as well as in our communications effort. As you've seen over 2 incidents since the convoy was removed from our streets, we've taken a very different posture in terms of how we plan, how we stage, and how we protect our residents. So we learned a lot during the convoy, and you've seen those pieces be put in place over a couple different incidents that went off with public safety front of mind and were both successful.
I want to go back to the idea of you speaking with the convoy organizers. I don't think you really answered that question. Have you had conversations with them? What did they tell you? And did they give you assurances that they're going to respect the restrictions that you put in place here in Ottawa?
So I won't get into the details of those conversations. We have a police liaison team, and one of their key responsibilities is to reach out to anyone that's actually trying to organize a protest or demonstration in our city. They do that on every case and have done that in this case. As we know, there's multiple groups that formed the ultimate occupation of our streets in February. So we're trying to identify and work to identify as many organizers and leaders within those groups to have conversations. And in those conversations, we really clearly set our expectations in terms of public safety and lawful protests. So those conversations will go on and will continue until the events are over.
Okay, we have to leave this right now. We'll leave this right now. We may rejoin this if it is continuing after our newscast. We'll have a complete news update on everything that you've just heard from Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson. Most of the questions going to the interim police chief, Steve Bell, about the plans for Canada Day and the preparations for protests for Canada Day. This is The Rob Snow Show, and this is City News.
Est-ce que je peux prendre ta commande? Est-ce que je peux prendre ta commande? Est-ce que tu peux me dire quoi faire d'une vie devenue carrière? Est-ce que je peux prendre ta commande? Est-ce que je peux savoir ton nom? Est-ce que je peux savoir ton nom? Est-ce que je peux connaître les vœux au fond de tes yeux quand on effleure nos ombres? Est-ce que je peux savoir ton nom? Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Parce que sors jamais ton char. Ici les amours sont rares. Au drive-thru. Ici les amours sont rares. Est-ce que les mots vont me venir? Est-ce que les mots vont me venir? Est-ce que je vais finir par dire comment je me sens? Est-ce que je pourrai le faire rire? Est-ce que les mots vont me venir? Est-ce que les mots vont me venir? Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Parce que sors jamais ton char. Ici les amours sont rares. Au drive-thru. Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Au drive-thru. Ici les amours sont rares.
Hey, I'm Ash Ravens. I'm a singer-songwriter in Ottawa, Canada. I'm performing on Encore Ottawa 3. It's been great, especially for me, who's a completely newcomer to the Ottawa music industry and music scene. I've been welcomed with open arms. I'm a member of OMIC and I'm loving it so far. This kind of concert series promotes music and gives us newcomers or even like new bands a big chance to showcase their talents and share their music with the world. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for me to perform at the beautiful Shenkman Arts Center. I'm supported by Rogers TV, obviously, and I've been checking out the previous Encore 1 and 2 videos on Rogers channel, 22 channel, as well as YouTube, and I've been blown away. Frankly, it's so beautiful. It's world class, to be honest. And The lighting and the sound, everything was mind-blowing for me. And so I'm really glad that I'm here, enjoying this very moment, talking to you guys, going to be performing on stage for Rogers TV and for OMIC. Yeah, it's a big opportunity for me.
This is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 27th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 20 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ottawa's mayor says no warnings, no second chances. Jim Watson says anyone who wants to disrupt the celebration of this country on Friday, Canada Day, on LeBreton Flats or anywhere in the city will be dealt with swiftly. Kim Ayotte, the general manager of Emergency and Protective Services, says all city departments are working together to make sure this celebration of the country is festive. Ayotte says if you're going downtown, heed the rules, follow the City of Ottawa on Twitter and police as well. Watch their policies because they could change. Interim Police Chief Steve Bell says the first plan in place to properly protect the city before, during, and after the July 1st celebration.
We expect there to be demonstrations. This is a right of all Canadians and it will be protected. We will not, however, accept unlawful behavior, and we will not allow vehicle-based demonstrations in the motor vehicle control zone. Visitors and community members will see a significant police posture and presence throughout the city. This is necessary to support our ability to swiftly control the core for public safety reasons or support the city's vehicle control zone.
Now, Bell says after a tough couple of years, Canadians deserve the opportunity to celebrate the country's birthday safely. There is a crowd in the hundreds of thousands expected, and Bell says they want to ensure it is safe for everyone. City News Time, 10:02. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
After some very warm temperatures yesterday, it will become less humid today. Still a chance, though, of some showers or thunderstorms. The high about 23 degrees. The average high is 25. Tonight, mainly cloudy and 12, and tomorrow sunshine and seasonal 25 degrees. For today, the high 23.
Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 20 degrees. The Ukrainian president has addressed the G7 leaders virtually at a summit in Germany today as they discuss the threat to global stability posed by Russia's invasion of his country. The White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the conversation did not focus on Zelensky asking for more military aid, but rather about strategy.
It was really about the way forward and how President Zelensky sees the course of the war and is trying to assimilate and incorporate all of the assistance he's been given to maximize Ukraine's capacity both to resist Russian advances and to pursue counterattacks where possible.
Now, a senior French diplomat says Zelensky also told leaders that now is not a time for negotiation with Russia because he needs to be in a stronger position first. City News Time at 10:03. A new study suggests our country handled the first couple of years of the COVID-19 pandemic and weathered the ensuing upheaval better than several other peer countries. The research was published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal today. Now, it credits Canada's strong performance to restrictive and persistent public health measures, as well as a successful vaccination campaign. A team of Ontario researchers compared data from February 2020 to February this year with 11 countries that had similar political, economic, and health care systems. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On The Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, The Rob Snow Show continues.
Would you support the Trudeau government offering Canadians a gas tax holiday? Yes or no, why or why not? Okay. gas tax holiday. Would you say, yes, Canadians are struggling to make ends meet because of the rising cost of living, because of inflation? Or would you say, no, this government is already spending too much money? This government is already too generous. And a tax cut or a relief payment of some sort will only make the fight against inflation longer and harder. That old line, the cure for high prices is high prices. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Let's talk about the price of gas and inflation. Should the federal government have a gas tax holiday? Yes? No? Why not should the federal government have a gas tax holiday? Okay. Now maybe you think, loaded question, Rob, for a Monday morning. Of course, who wouldn't want a gas tax holiday? Everybody would love to have a gas tax holiday. And look, maybe to a certain extent you're right. But, it could be that you're not right. The counter argument is, kind of presented it, the school of thought is out there. Maybe some of you share it. I don't know. You call me and tell me. There's a school of thought out there that the government should not be offering drivers any kind of relief. And not just drivers, but Canadians at large should not be offering them any kind of break from the rising cost of living through tax holidays or one-time payments or one-time temporary increases in social welfare benefits. That's what got us into this problem in the first place. And what is needed right now, and the term you're going to hear more and more, is demand destruction. We have to destroy demand. That unfortunately what is needed is less money flowing through the economy, less money for people to spend. And if the federal government makes a move to give people a break, that's only going to prolong everyone's pain. That only serves to make the Bank of Canada's job more difficult. And the fight to tame inflation will just take that much longer. And interest rates will have to go even higher. So the government shouldn't be doing anything of the sort. That's kind of the economic argument of it all, as opposed to the pocketbook argument of it all. And by the sounds of it, other than a bunch of programs that the government had already announced and is now rebranding, repackaging, and wrapping them up as inflation relief programs, the government isn't planning anything like a gas tax holiday. There is no plan from this government for a gas tax holiday. Some economists might say, well, that's the right thing to do. But I want to hear from you. I'm sure most of you own vehicles, and I'm sure most of those vehicles run on gas or diesel. And you're feeling the squeeze every time you fill up. So is it time that this government got with the program and did what so many other governments have done and offered people a break? A little break, a temporary reprieve from these punishingly high prices. Or do you think in the end it will just make matters worse? There's just too much money sloshing around in the economy, and sadly, giving people a break would only lengthen the amount of time it's going to take to get the situation back under control. So give me a call, share your thoughts. Here, this is the Talkback Hour. Okay, it's your hour. I'm going to be keeping track of your answers. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Should the federal government have a gas tax holiday? You see, U.S. President Joe Biden wants Congress to pass a gas tax holiday. He's pleading with the oil companies. Please pump more oil. He's pleading with the gas stations, neighborhoods all across America. You're charging too much for gas. Can you please bring down the price of gas? Americans are hurting.
So let's be honest with one another. My message is simple. To the companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump, this is a time of war, global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you are paying for the product. Do it now. Do it today.
Now.
Your customers,
today.
The American people, they need relief now.
Now. Do it now. Do it now. Nothing like that from Mr. Trudeau. Should Mr. Trudeau sound more like, I don't know, Mr. Biden? That's what I'm asking you. David in Ottawa. Good morning, David. You're on City News.
I'm going to say no.
No.
Because the people need to be shown. I think the military is in full control. And on this Canada Day, I got to thank the Canadian.
Goodbye. Steve in Westboro. Steve, you're on City News. Steve.
Yeah, I think we need a break for the gas because the food is going through the roof.
Right.
And Mr. Trudeau promises everything. And Doug Ford, didn't he state that if he got elected, he would bring down the tax?
That comes into effect on Canada Day. Doug Ford's little 4 cents a liter. I think it's 4 cents a liter, something like
4
that.
4 cents a liter, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
What is the most we've ever paid in this country, in Ontario, for gas?
I believe that was recently, wasn't it around $2.50 a liter, Steve? $2.50 a liter?
Yeah, right, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So that's the most we've ever paid, right?
Sure, yeah.
So that means the food's going to go up because the food is brought by diesel trucks usually to the supermarkets, right?
Yes. Well, diesel is around the corner from this radio station. Diesel is $2.32 a liter.
That's craziness. It used to be cheaper, right?
Oh, a lot cheaper, yeah.
A lot cheaper, because my father-in-law was a diesel mechanic.
Yeah,
So to make a long story short, I heard the grocery stores are making a fortune.
Well, whatever. I mean, I just want to know if you think there should be a gas tax holiday. There's lots of taxes on gasoline and diesel
I think it should be brought down to $1.60 like they did in Alberta.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Gotcha.
Okay,
Thank you. Gas tax holiday. Wade in Ottawa, you're on City News. Should there be a gas tax holiday?
There needs to be a short-term gas tax relief.
Okay.
We have groceries, we have tourism, we have the traveling people that spend the money.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can't afford to go to their summer cottage destination, someone's going to lose a job, more people unemployed, and we're raking record profits on gas tax to the governments. We got to stop other relief, but we look at Sobeys or other giant food store chains, record profits.
Right.
We're not going to fight.
So temporary gas tax relief, you would be in favor of that. All right, gotcha.
Big time.
Gotcha. Thank you, Wade. Gotcha. Yep, no problem. I mean, the pain from higher prices, not just for gasoline, but broad-based inflation. The pain is real, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real cost of living crisis, and the hurt is real, and it's hurting real people. The evidence is all around. We have a report in the news now, calls up to the Distress Center of Ottawa. The Distress Center of Ottawa. We're seeing an increase in calls about financial stress, they say. People's mental health in decline because they're worried about money. Worried about not being able to pay the bills, not being able to afford the basics. And, the anxiety has, it's reaching a point where they're picking up the phone and they're calling the Distress Center, for crying out loud. In addition, we had a poll out last week from the Angus Reid Institute. According to its latest survey, 45% of Canadians, 45%, almost half of Canadians, say they're worse off now than they were this time last year. Worse off. Highest reading in 12 years. And they think a third think the situation is only going to get worse. It is not sunshine and lollipops for a lot of people. All kinds of U.S. states, countries all across Europe have either suspended or they have cut gas taxes. U.S. President Biden wants the U.S. Congress to do the same thing. Nothing like that from Mr. Trudeau. Nothing. And it's a long list. It's a long list of American states, a long list of European countries that have offered at least relief on fuel taxes. Nothing from Mr. Trudeau. What do you think? Barry, you're in Ottawa. Barry, what do you think?
Well, Rob, I think the price of gas is ridiculous.
Yeah. Should there be a gas tax holiday?
Yeah, well, I think, not a holiday. I think it should be just completely cut off.
Okay.
Trudeau's carbon tax is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But when we've got an inflation, we've got a war with Ukraine going on, I think the price should be dropped right back to what it was before the war with Ukraine. And I think we should have some kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, levy or something like that on the gas companies to keep them from putting the price up.
I see. Okay, like a windfall tax, There's
no reason for the prices to be going up when Trudeau's holding back on the petrochemical industry.
Okay.
If he had the petrochemical industry going full tilt, then maybe put on some kind of taxes, but not the way the oil companies jump the prices up on their own.
Gotcha.
They should have better controls over it.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you. Okay, 10:15, Rob Snow Show. Would you support a gas tax holiday? Rob Snow Show, City News.
And here are the rest of your Ottawa 67.
Sean Callahan from behind his own net. Moskowitz. There's a giveaway. Here's Byers. Shot right on. Mrazek has it.
Ottawa has, for the most part, carried the play in the last 3 or 4 games here, and this is when Barry's got their chances on poor puck management, puck decisions right there. Ill-advised pass, not a good pass, a turnover, creates the first scoring chance and shot on net for the Barrie Colts in this game. This is what Ottawa's got to do better of tonight, is making sure that their puck management is good. They're crisp and they're solid when they have it.
That's the first action. Scores! The Barrie Colts draw first blood. It's Greg Such. Smith out there now for Ottawa. He's going to head in front of the net. Oh, dig it away, scores! Dalton Smith tapped in front of the net. We are tied at 1. Back to the point. Callahan shot's blocked. And here comes McDonald with a head of steam. Shot scores! McDonald with the long shot. And the Barrie Colts take a 2-1 lead. Back to the point. CC walks. Shot. Scores! Cody Ceci.
It might have been deflected right away, right when he took the shot. Something changed on the way to the net.
It dipped as it got close to the net. I noticed that. And good cycling. Gus does a great job of being patient with the puck, bringing 2 guys to him.
And he'll win it back to the point. Ceci. Here's Prince, traffic in front, down low. Trying to get scores! With 24.1 seconds to go. An icing, waved off at the last second. Bahena trying to track it down, rolls deep into the Ottawa zone. Ceci to meet him. Trying to center it, bouncing puck in the crease, scores! With 8.7 to go. Mark Scheifele ties it at 3. Force McNeil to hustle back. Niederberger steers it away. Gustus right on it. Scores! Brad Gustafson from the boards. The Ottawa 67 advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. The little man comes up big for the Ottawa 67s.
He'll never score a bigger goal.
No, that's for sure.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Gas tax holiday. Would you support a gas tax holiday? Lots of European countries have had a gas tax holiday. Lots of U.S. states, gas tax holiday. With the Prime Minister, it's been crickets from the Prime Minister on any relief on the price of gas. Should that change? In Port Hope, John, you're on City News. John?
Yes.
Hi, John.
I believe that our first task at hand is to fight inflation, which is causing all the problems, or most of the problems that we have. And raising gas prices is like throwing fire or gasoline on a fire.
Okay, cutting gas prices, you mean cutting gas prices?
Well, no, increasing. It causes inflation. It's pure inflation.
Okay.
Because everybody's passing the buck to pay the gas, and then people want salary increases to pay the gas and so on. Right. So one easy way is to cut out the government taxation on a product, and that way it will help inflation and get inflation under control, and then we can deal with the other issues.
Okay, so you do support a gas tax holiday?
I do support.
Okay.
I think that the Liberal Party is just basically trying to fuel tax increases, because when you have inflation, guess who benefits? The government, because they're going to be taxing more because everybody's up in a higher tax bracket now, paying for the same, paying much more money for the same thing, but paying more taxes.
Well, certainly on the price by way of the consumption taxes through the sales taxes, because the sale price is greater. That's a windfall for the government. No doubt about it.
But,
yes.
Yeah, it's true,
Yes.
because it's on a percentage basis.
Yeah.
But also, if you're going to have to make $40,000 to pay for what you used to pay $30,000 for, that extra $10,000 is going to be taxed.
I guess a counter argument. I like the way you're approaching this, but a counter argument is: look, if you send me money or the government sends you money, John, what it's doing is it's stimulating the economy. We'll have more money to spend, and we'll go out and spend it. And the problem is people are spending too much money right now. The economy's too hot, and that's fueling inflation. And what we need is some fiscal restraint right now from the government.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that. But the thing is,
don't cut gas taxes is what some economists would say.
Well, no, I know, but they also benefit because their salaries aren't affected.
Okay, all right, John. Okay, thank you. John supports a gas tax holiday. 750-1310, one line available. Sharon in Ottawa. Sharon.
Hi, Ron.
You support a gas tax holiday.
You know what? I do support it. And the reason I don't think it's going to happen, because I think this fits into Trudeau's ideology, and he would never back down on the carbon taxes. Look what happened during the start of the pandemic when people were begging him, everybody's out of work, don't raise the tax. But I think this is sort of fitting into his ideology. Well, people will have to drive less because fuel is so expensive. But the problem is he's tone deaf. The very people that this is hurting the most are the people who can least afford it. So the cashiers in the stores, the people who are out there working hard, but basically they're the working poor.
Yeah, I think it's even beyond that now. I think inflation, the fear is that it's becoming so entrenched. It's feeding through the income spectrum now. It's not just the people on the edge.
I agree with you.
More and more people are getting closer to the edge.
On the bottom, like our son, we're giving him gas money every week because he can't take public transit to work.
Right.
He doesn't make a lot of money. He's just barely living hand to mouth.
Wow.
And he doesn't want to take money from anyone, but he has no choice. And you go to the grocery store, like it impacts everything. And I understand the reasoning. Well, if we lower the gas tax, people will spend more. But, the things they're spending on, like food, like gas to get to work, or if it was colder, gas to heat their home. I see what I pay on my gas bill, carbon tax. It's crazy. And I mean, I can afford it, but so many people can't.
Okay.
It's hurting the very segment of society that he has always said, this is who I'm out to help. Well, no, he's hurting them.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was going through this Angus Reid survey that was out last week on the rising cost of living and how people are feeling, the anxiety that's out there about inflation. On higher mortgage payments, it said more than a third, 35%, said they couldn't handle a monthly increase of $150 on the mortgage payment, $150 increase, quote unquote, without difficulty. And if the mortgage payment increases by $300 a month, 66% said, quote, they would have to make major changes or simply could not afford it. And not much better for renters. 52% of those polled said paying the rent is either tough or very difficult. And as for confidence in the Bank of Canada, that's not the rosiest picture either. 40% of those polled said they don't trust the Bank of Canada to fulfill its mandate. 41%. Don't trust the Bank of Canada to fulfill its mandate being price stability. So none of it is encouraging. It clearly shows a lot of Canadians are getting closer and closer to the edge, and a whole lot of them are telling that pollster, Angus Reid Institute, the mortgage payment goes up by $300 a month. They have to make major changes in the household budget. More than half are struggling to pay the rent already if they rent an apartment. It paints a picture of people who need a break. So should the government give them a break like a gas tax holiday? Jason in Stittsville, what do you think? Gas tax holiday.
Yeah, it's a tough one, Ron, because people, they for sure need the relief. I mean, I'm one of them, and I have a decent job, but things are tough. But I'm worried that it's more of a Band-Aid. Like you said, like a lot of economists are saying, I'm kind of the opinion we need to go through a bit of a gut punch, to get things balanced again.
Okay.
Even with Biden, it doesn't look like he's even going to get that, eh? Like, even some Democrats are voicing concerns over it. And there's been a clip going around of Obama a few years ago. He said how it's just a gimmick. It's not really.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. Okay.
But anyway, yeah, it's a tough one, man, because people are struggling. And like what you were just saying about the interest rates too, I was reading about how if we don't get spending under control, it's not just on the Bank of Canada. The fiscal policy, people setting the fiscal policy, they need to get spending under control.
Yeah.
Because it's really, and like you were saying with the mortgages and stuff, if interest rates go too high, people are going to lose their houses. We're going to see what happened in the U.S. in 2008. Which, people.
Let's hope not. People are calling up the Ottawa Distress Center worried about money.
I know, right? It's crazy.
Thanks, Jason. The Angus Reid Institute surveys 1,500 Canadians. And almost half say they're worse off than they were this time last year, and a third think it's only going to get worse. And then you can dig in a little. I read the whole report this morning. When you dig a little deeper into that Angus Reid survey, you find out 43% of those who took the survey with household incomes of between $100,000 and $150,000. So affluent, $100,000 to $150,000 household income a year. 43% said buying groceries is either uncomfortable or a struggle. Household income $100,000 to $150,000 a year. Wow. That's not good news. Let's take one quick one here. John Kempville. John, gas tax holiday, John.
Hey, Rob.
Hi there.
I think a very important point was made by your previous John that called about the fact that these consumption taxes are based on a percentage.
Yep.
So when you have the base of the, what you're taxing it on, if that's increasing, obviously it's a windfall for the government. A very simple solution here would be simply for them to say, okay, we're going to adjust the percentage to reflect the fact that the commodity prices are changing. Instead of taking the windfall, so a complete gas tax holiday, I think, is ridiculous. You can't possibly do that because you're going to have to replace that taxation somewhere, right?
Right.
But to change the percentage would be very simple, and it's not just the federal government, it's provincial governments as well that are getting this windfall.
Yep.
You don't hear anything from Doug Ford on this.
Well, Doug Ford, the gas tax in Ontario goes down July 1st.
It does go down July 1st, but doesn't go down enough to really reflect the fact that the commodity price has doubled. And the other thing that I think people are not really considering is the fact that corporate profits are at all-time records right now. Inflation is not just fueled by, any government fiscal policy.
Right.
This is also fueled by corporations that are taking advantage of the situation.
Okay.
And have been increasing their prices and increasing their profit margins.
So the Associated Press had a big story about greedflation. They labeled it greedflation.
It's a huge part of it.
Okay. All right.
They took the opportunity, and fine. We live in a capitalist, quasi-capitalist environment. So you can't blame them. So what's to do then? What does the government do? Do we go back to wage and price controls? That's going to be really popular.
Well, I hope not, because it didn't work very well the first time.
It was pathetic the first time. It never worked at all, and it never does work. So what's your answer? Like, I always respect your opinion. So what do you think? What's the solution?
I don't know. I'm torn because would you just be stimulating an already overheated economy? I can see that side of it, but also stress kills, and a lot of people are stressed out, and they're at their limit, and they could use some help. So it's not an easy answer, John. It's not an easy. I got to run. The 10:30 news is coming up. 10:30 news coming up. We'll pick it up right after the news. This is City News.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on a pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
For local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 27th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it is 21 degrees. And here's what's making news this hour. With Canada Day celebrations just 4 days away, Ottawa's mayor says there will be no warnings and no second chances. Jim Watson says anyone who wants to disrupt the Canada Day celebrations on Friday, either on Le Breton Flats or anywhere else in the city, will be dealt with swiftly. Meanwhile, Councillor representing Somerset Ward, Catherine McKenney, says they understand the frustrations of some people in the city, especially with protesters planning to roll into the city. They say they have spoken with Acting Police Chief Steve Bell, who tells them Ottawa Police is more prepared for any eventualities on Friday and that more street closures are ready to be rolled out in any areas not currently covered by the exclusionary zone for Canada Day. And G7 leaders have pledged to support Ukraine for as long as it takes following a closed-door video conference with the country's president. Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the leaders today during their summit in the German Alps. President Zelensky's top request was for more air defense systems, saying now is not a time for negotiations with Russia because he needs to be in stronger position. City News time is 10:33. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Would you support a gas tax holiday from the Trudeau government? Yes or no? Why not? Yes, Canadians are struggling to make ends meet. Of course, I support a gas tax holiday. Or no, the government is already too generous, spending too much money. We need some fiscal restraint and a relief payment or a tax cut. A gas tax cut would only make the fight against inflation last longer and harder. The cure for high prices is high prices. So the saying goes. I found it interesting that Statistics Canada, when it released the inflation report, which it did last week, on Wednesday of last week, it provided a hyperlink to a report that the agency did a few months ago, or just a few weeks ago, actually, on food insecurity and mental health well-being. And that report said that overall, 1 in 5 Canadians perceives, first of all, overall, 1 in 5 Canadians perceives their mental health to be fair or poor. But among those who are also worried about paying for groceries, those suffering from food insecurity, that number's 45%. 45%. That's with people facing moderate food insecurity and people with severe food insecurity. Think of somebody on ODSP trying to get by on $1,100 a month in the city of Ottawa. It's 70%. Poor mental health is not a pretty picture. Like being able to buy groceries or being worried about being able to buy groceries, it's wreaking havoc on people's mental health. And it's no better when it comes to trying to keep a roof over your head. The 9th of June, Statistics Canada says Statistics Canada, not me, 56% of Canadians are very or somewhat concerned about whether they can afford housing. Much worse for younger Canadians, 29 years of age and younger, twice as likely as those over the age of 40 to say they're very concerned about their ability to afford housing. So that's why I wanted to ask, one way you could relieve some of this stress that so many people are feeling, and stress kills. One way to relieve some of this stress might be for the Trudeau government to give people a break on fuel. Regular gas prices up, above $2 a liter today. Diesel, $2.30. Gas tax holiday. Lower or cut the gas tax. The counter argument is give people a break. You're not helping them. You're making the fight against inflation that much more difficult, and it's going to last longer. This period of pain is going to last longer. Share your opinion. Gas tax holiday. Let's get back to it here. I've gabbed enough already. Dan is on the 401.
Hi.
Dan.
How you doing?
Good, Dan. You support a gas tax holiday?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Okay. Why?
Not at all.
Okay.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems that we have right now is everybody's talking about the government like it's some thing that's like working against Canadians. It's us. We're the government. We elect people to represent us. We do this to ourselves.
Okay.
So cutting our own tax dollars or worrying that the government is trying to get too much money seems a little weird. The other thing is, we've been promoting the idea of green energy, alternative fuels, public transportation. All these things cut down on our use of fuels. So this is just a temper tantrum by a bunch of people protecting their own self-interest to make sure that you keep spending your money on their gas.
Okay.
Like they all over.
What about
Facebook,
the financial hardship, though, that people are facing? The anxiety, the worry, it's obvious, it's plain, it's there.
Yep. It's
right?
real and it's true.
Yeah.
But it also needs a reality check because a lot of people have never known what it is really like. So a guy with $150,000 is thinking, oh, this month I might not be able to buy that brand new $1,300 iPhone.
Right.
Like you said, there's somebody on ODSP going, I don't even have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
It's a huge conflict of what is really causing people stress and how, your own stress is valid.
So people who have never suffered deserve to suffer, Dan, is that the case that you're making? Or?
No, I'm not saying they deserve to suffer, but it's going to be a real difference if this does go haywire. I grew up in Brantford when that entire city economy collapsed in the early 80s, and unemployment rocked over 30% for Tier 1 jobs.
Right.
Not all jobs.
But you don't want people, you don't want that kind of misery to be
No, but I mean, people need to realize too, are you really at the point yet where you're going to put the keys in your mailbox and just leave a note for the bank saying you can have it?
Okay. All right. Okay.
You know what I mean? We're not there yet, and there's lots we can do before we get there. Like, there's a lot of frivolous things we spend money on that really, they make us happy, they make us smile, that helps with depression, but then, you spent that money and now you can't afford groceries, shelter, or gas. Did you really make the right choice?
Okay. All right.
Whose fault is that?
Okay. Kind of a wake-up call. Slap in the face for some people. Okay, Dan, I got you. I got you, Dan.
What I'm saying is, instead of blaming the government for this, we elected these people. We are the government. Let's take a good look at ourselves and fight this off.
All right. Got you, Dan. Thank you. Thank you. Glenn in Nepean. Glenn. So there you go.
Good morning,
there you go. Okay. Very interesting discussion. Dan, gas tax holiday. What do I put you down? Yes, no, what?
No, I would think what they should be doing is scrapping the carbon tax in its entirety and keep it off.
Okay. Get rid of the carbon tax. Just get rid of that altogether.
Between you and I, we both know it's not really accomplishing anything.
Doesn't seem to be doing too much.
Everybody something.
Well, plus they say they give you all the money back anyway.
Yeah, and you and I both know that's not true.
Well, I mean, what good is it if you get all the money back? What's the point of it?
I mean, it's just a joke.
Why not just let me keep the money in the first place?
The other thing that nobody's talking about, since this inflation's been running wild, is that it's not even a true inflation rate, because if you put the price of gas in there and some of the other things, inflation is actually probably closer to 10%. But the other thing is, nobody is talking about the interest on the debt these days.
Yeah, nobody cares about that anymore.
Yeah, with the rate going up, and you got $1 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
That's all the money that's not going to be able to go to other social things that they wanted it to go to.
Okay. All right. Yeah, true enough. It's not top of mind for a lot of people. I mean, Doug Ford, as a conservative, he says, just won a massive majority government. He's going to run a $19 billion deficit, a deficit way bigger than anything Kathleen Wynne's government ever ran.
Well, yeah, but if you took McGuinty and Wynne together, they did a pretty good job.
Well, nevertheless,
And you and I had a chat about this, believe it or not, going way back after one of the elections, and exactly what's happened in Canada is pretty much what I was telling you back then. And you said, well,
I'd have to go up and look at. I'd have to look it up on tape, Glenn, to see if that's true or not.
Pessimistic. Well,
okay, all right, okay, Glenn. All right.
Now have a good look around.
Good. So your doomy, gloomy machine came true, Glenn. Very good. Okay, all right. Bye-bye. Yeah. Let's take this call. 3 lines available. Dan in Lowertown. Daniel.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, hi there. On a gas tax holiday, what do you think about that idea?
No, I'm opposed to it.
Opposed to it. Okay. All right. Why is that?
Well, I mean, this is a price signal. It's going to lead people to change, make different decisions in terms of their buying habits, especially for vehicles.
Okay.
There was an opinion piece in the Globe and Mail last week. I think you were on holiday, so I want to bring your attention to it because I couldn't agree more with it.
Okay.
It's called Your Car is Expanding Waistline.
My car's expanding waistline. Okay.
Yeah, so Canadians are in love, and the object of their affection is hulks of steel on 4 wheels, trucks and SUVs.
Yeah.
In 2005, 1 out of 3 passenger vehicles in Canada was a truck or SUV. By 2019, that figure had doubled to 2 out of 3. No major country, not even the U.S., has consumers who buy so many trucks and SUVs and so few cars. The average Canadian vehicle has the world's worst fuel efficiency, according to the International Energy Agency.
Okay.
At nearly 9 liters per 100 kilometers.
Right. Okay. My wife drives a Mini. Okay. And it costs now $125 to fill it. She doesn't drive an SUV. She doesn't drive a pickup truck. She drives a Mini. And it's costing $125 to fill it. A Mini.
Yeah.
Won't somebody give my wife a break?
Well, I'm glad you brought the example of a Mini because there's actually a version of for sure I know that there's a plug-in hybrid version of a Mini.
Yeah.
And I believe there's an all-electric version of a Mini.
Sure. How much? How much? How many arms and legs do I have to give up to buy one of these magical electric vehicles? Daniel.
Well, it might.
You would be all for a rebate, though. I bet you'd be all for a rebate, free money from the government to buy an electric car, right? And a rebate for the charging equipment, and filling it up for free.
Absolutely. Because we're in a climate crisis. We have limited amount of time. We have less than 10 years to cut our emissions in order to keep global warming under 2%. And anything, including high gas prices that accelerate that transition, is good in the long term.
Good in the long term. Okay, I got you. Got you, Daniel. Yep. Okay, that's the environmental outlook. Okay, taxes on fuel. This is right from Natural Resources Canada. Fuel consumption levies in Canada. How are fuels taxed? Oh, let me count the ways. So the federal government charges an excise tax, flat rate, 10 cents a liter on gasoline. It's been the same since 1995. 4 cents a liter on diesel. It's been 4 cents a liter on diesel since 1987. Furnace oil is exempt from excise taxes. And there's no excise tax on natural gas or propane. Excise tax. Then there are provincial governments collecting gas and diesel taxes. In Ontario, the fuel tax is 14.7 cents a liter. It's going down on Canada Day. That's for gasoline. It's 14.3 cents a liter for diesel. Then you have 13% PST in Ontario, 5% GST, and also... for Mr. Trudeau, there is the carbon levy, the carbon tax, which is 11 cents a liter on gasoline and 14 cents a liter for diesel. In some cities, they have their own gas taxes. In Vancouver, Victoria, Montreal. Lucky them, those drivers there. And by the way, you pay the excise tax, then you pay the fuel tax, then you pay the carbon tax, add all that up, and then you get to pay the sales tax on top of the tax. So there's tax on tax. Right? Yeah. Consumption tax, excise tax, carbon tax, then tax on tax. Do we need a gas tax holiday? 750-1310. Be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Riding requires attention and focus. No distractions, no moment of unawareness, because one brief moment can cost a lifetime of other moments. Everyone deserves to arrive home.
The Maritime provinces are home to some of the oldest settlements in Canadian history. But did you know that one of the first was actually started by black settlers? Take a minute to learn about the rise and untimely fall of Africville. Black people have lived in Nova Scotia since before the founding of Halifax in 1749, but it wasn't until after the American Revolution in the late 1700s and early 1800s that large groups of black settlers began to arrive in the province, many of whom were former slaves promised freedom and land in Nova Scotia. What they encountered when they arrived, however, was racist treatment by their white neighbors and government officials. This pushed many black people to build homes on the outskirts of town instead. But despite the area receiving little support from government officials and lacking necessities like functioning sewage systems, access to clean water, and proper garbage disposals, the tight-knit community persevered, and so Africville was born. For more than 150 years, the small community grew, expanding from just a few homes to a population of over 400 people. Everything changed, however, in 1964 when plans for a new bridge and the idea of urban renewal prompted the municipality to set its sights on Africville's land. Instead of investing in the community, officials approved a relocation program that promised free job training and employment assistance to help residents through relocation. But the reality wasn't so kind. Residents had their belongings moved in city dump trucks and homes were demolished immediately after their owners left. Of the 400-plus people living in Africville, only 14 residents held clear legal titles to their land, so the rest were only given $500 with the promise of more social aid in the future. Not much else was actually done to support Africville and its residents until 2001, when a United Nations report called for reparations to be paid to the community. In 2010, Halifax Mayor Peter Kelly apologized for the atrocities against Africville as part of a $4.5 million compensation deal. In 2021, Councillor Lindell Smith put forward a 7-part motion to plan for the future of Africville alongside local organizations and the descendants of former residents. Today, there's a public park and museum where Africville once stood to teach visitors about the history of the land and its community. If you've never heard of Africville, you're not alone. The tragic story of this small Black community in Nova Scotia is not as well known as it should be.
To talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Okay, just let me very quickly run down some of the countries and U.S. states that have made moves on their gas tax. Because if Mr. Trudeau's government was to have some kind of gas tax holiday, they'd be certainly bringing up the rear. So in Belgium, fuel taxes cut by 17.5 cents a liter for both diesel and gasoline. In France, they cut fuel taxes by 15 cents a liter. Germany cut fuel taxes by 30 cents a liter for gasoline, 15 cents a liter for diesel. Italy, 25 cents a liter cut to the gas tax. Luxembourg, 7.5 cents a liter. But I think you can walk across Luxembourg in about an hour, right? You don't even need a car. Spain, 20 cents a liter cut to the gas tax. Hungary, there's a price cap. They capped the price of gas. You are not allowed to sell gas or diesel for more than €1.30. That's it. Across the United States, Joe Biden, we played the clip. Please pump more oil. Please stop charging so much for gasoline. Please stop being a bunch of price gouging scoundrels. And please, Congress, pass a gas tax holiday. U.S. states. Connecticut, Democrat governor suspended the state's gas tax 25 cents a gallon. In Georgia, Republican governor, 29 cents a gallon. Maryland, 36 cents per gallon. They suspended it. California, you have Governor Gavin Newsom wants to send drivers $400 for every car they own, maximum 2 cars. Florida suspended its state gas tax. So did Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri. New Jersey's bill would cut the state's gas tax in half from 42 cents down to 21 cents a gallon. New York State wants to suspend its gas tax. Same with Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and yes, Virginia. Plans to cut the gas tax all across the United States, but not here in Canada where the carbon tax went up in April. Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. Just what we needed. Gas tax holiday. Let's get it going here. Down the stretch they come. Chris in Lanark. Chris.
Yeah, how you doing, sir?
Good. Chris, gas tax holiday, yes or no?
I definitely say yes, 100%. I'll give you one example. I run a small food service-based business.
Okay.
I've watched canola oil in a 16-liter pail go from $36 to $56 in just over 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a huge, and that's just one product.
Yeah.
When food continues to rise like this, inflation is going to go through the roof, and people are going to start questioning whether they can pay their mortgages. The whole domino, put gas in their car, it goes all the way down the line.
Yeah.
When you can't get goods and services.
Well, plus the like I'm hearing it from farmers, their input costs are way up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, their feed, their fuel, their fertilizer, everything is way up.
I'm in a farming community, and I hear it from the farmers directly, and they're telling me that the cost of beef, the cost of everything they're growing is people don't even have an idea what's going to happen. They're going to find out at the end of the summer.
Yeah, it's going to be brutal.
What they're all telling me.
All right.
When you see this happen, this domino just keeps going right across the entire economy. If people can't afford to drive, they can't afford to go to work. How are they going to pay their mortgage payments?
Yeah.
The list goes on and on and on.
All right, Chris, thank you. Great point. Yep, thank you. Yep. In Shawville, Keith.
Hello.
Gas tax holiday, yes or no?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
How can you trust this government with the increased revenues they're making on the taxes because of inflation? It's just incredible, and they're not showing any restraint. The average person in Canada has to tighten their belt and watch their spending, but not this government. For instance, the Blues Fest is a great organization. It brings a lot of entertainment, but why should they get $9.8 million at a time like this? I did some calculations. It costs the average medical student $26,000 per year. With that $9.8 million, they could provide 100 more MDs in 4 years. They could help the provinces out with that money.
Right.
Anyways, that's my point of view.
All right, Keith. Thank you. Okay. Yep. 750-1310. Helen in Westboro. Helen.
Hi. Good morning.
Hi, Helen. Gas tax. Yes. Holiday.
Have a relief for the gas tax.
Okay.
Because I'm finding that, like, if you go to fill up your car and you start to feel sick and sweating, then you end up with car owner virus. That's it.
All right. That's one of your cornier ones.
I know.
Car owner virus. Okay.
A lot of people have it.
Yeah. Car owner virus. Okay. I see what you did there. Calgary. Ian says in Calgary.
Mr. Snow, how are you?
Oh, okay. All right, Ian. Good to hear your voice. I was thinking about you just the other day that I haven't heard from you in a while, but it's good to hear from you now. Gas tax holiday.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to go the farming route because I went out and did some seeding a couple months ago, but you were just talking about that, so I'm going to go a different spin here. I think we should cancel or get rid of the gas tax for some time. I'm out here building land for homes right now, so electricity's great, but unfortunately, great big pieces of yellow heavy equipment. There's not much going on for electrifying them yet, and it costs a pile of money to fuel these machines every day. The one I'm in has 2 engines in it, and we want to look at things that we can't change, like inflation and all that right now. There's other little things that are applying to the cost of homes in which I cannot afford, David cannot afford, and it's the price that my company has to charge the developer for what we're doing out here, which then obviously goes on to the consumer who tries to buy the house on the land that we've developed. There's got to be something done here, Rob. It's just getting silly, man.
All right. Thank you. A little loud there. This will be the last call of the hour in Ottawa South. Robert.
Hi there.
Hi, Robert. Gas tax holiday, yes or no?
No.
No.
Okay. I think honestly the solution, and is kind of bad as it sounds, I think the solution should be cut spending in other areas of your life to make up the difference. You know, I mean, we all have things that we can cut back on. I think that has to be the solution.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who called. Turned out to be a pretty busy hour on that one. 15 calls for the hour. Pretty busy hour. Not the busiest, but pretty busy. Gas tax holiday, yes. 11.5, because some people were like 50-50. You know. One person could not make up their mind. Couldn't get a straight answer out of them. 11.5 to 4.5. Okay, interesting. Thank you very much, everybody, for your calls. And we will do it again tomorrow, right after the 10 o'clock news. Rob Snow Show, City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 27th. Good morning. I am Damilola Onime. Right now in Ottawa and in Smith Falls, it is 21 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The City of Ottawa and Ottawa Police say they are fully prepared for any scenarios as another round of convoy protests are expected to descend on the capital for Canada Day. The first convoy early this year saw protesters clog the streets and bring Ottawa to a standstill for more than 3 weeks. City News Parliamentary reporter Cormac McSweeney with more.
Fully prepared to respond to any situation.
Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson says police forces and the city will be ready for whatever happens on Canada Day. The Emergency Operations Centre will be mobilized and much of the downtown core will be closed to traffic to prevent any vehicle demonstration. Interim Police Chief Steve Bell says they will not tolerate any illegal activity.
We're prepared to take decisive and lawful action to deal with threats, occupation attempts, and other unlawful behavior that we observe.
Bell adds protesters are not allowed to build structures like stages, set up speakers for a dance party, or tents for camping. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to descend on downtown Ottawa on the official celebration site of LeBreton Flats, but officials couldn't say how many of them may be protesters. Police will be getting extra resources from other forces, and it will basically be all hands on deck. They have been in contact with organizers of the planned demonstrations to let them know their expectations, but officials did not say what the response was from protesters. Many of these promises were made in January ahead of the first convoy. When asked how people can trust them to get it right this time, Chief Bell says they're taking a very different posture this time around. He says he wants it to be a safe, fun, and peaceful Canada Day. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And as the capital gears up for Canada Day celebrations, emotions are heightened in some quarters. As City Councillor for Somerset Ward, Catherine McKenney, tells us some Ottawans are feeling frustrated with the possibilities of more protests rolling into their city. For people planning to go out to counter-protest on Canada Day, they say their main concern is safety of Ottawans.
I always, appeal for everyone to remember that people live where you're protesting, and when you leave, people are left there. So, I think that while I understand it certainly, I'm always caution for the safety of residents who live there.
And they say, unlike January and February, when protesters were able to take over the downtown core, there is a plan in place this time to avoid a repeat performance. And our team coverage continues with Chris Curris bringing us the local impact of Canada Day preparations.
The motor vehicle exclusion zone will be in place from Wednesday morning until Monday, but that could change, says GM of Emergency Preparedness with the city, Kim Ayotte.
It's an ongoing discussion with regards to what could be added and what streets might be added. And I can tell you right now, we're currently having those discussions regarding other areas such as the market.
He says bylaw will be out and will be ticketing and towing with no warnings. So watch where your car is parked, but also be aware that there will be some traffic delays this weekend. Interim Chief of Police Steve Bell says they developed their plan in the shadow of the unlawful protests of this winter and have spoken to members of the community.
We're very aware of the lingering trauma and the concern about what they're hearing after those events.
But for everyone, he says you can expect to see an increased police posture. Chris Curry's City News.
With the weather forecast, here is City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
After some very warm temperatures yesterday, it will become less humid today. Still a chance, though, of some showers or thunderstorms. The high about 23 degrees. The average high is 25. Tonight, mainly cloudy and 12, and tomorrow, sunshine and seasonal 25 degrees. For today, the high 23.
City News time is 11:03. For folks wanting to visit the Gatineau Park this summer, you can now do the travel over there for free. The NCC is providing a free shuttle bus to transport you to and from the park this summer. The shuttle will run every weekend until August 28th. It'll depart from downtown Ottawa at Wellington and Lyon Streets and also from the Canadian Museum of History in Quebec. Passengers will be dropped off at locations like Camp Fortune, the Pink Lake and Champlain Lookout. The shuttle runs every half hour between 9 a.m. and 4:45 p.m. I am Damilola Onime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's great to welcome back Jeffrey Johnston for a weekly look. It's a big international news. Jeffrey is an international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig Standard. Welcome back. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Let's talk about what is happening across the Horn of Africa, where there is a terrible famine. It is a humanitarian catastrophe in the making. How bad is it?
Well, I first want to say thank you very much for making time to talk about this, because it's really not getting the coverage that it deserves. Yes. So there are a bunch of metrics that have to be met for it to actually be called a famine, because a number of years ago, the international community realized that the word famine had become this loaded political term. So without getting too technical, there's got to be a certain amount of death. There has to be a certain amount of malnutrition and another number of other metrics. And there are parts of Somalia that now meet that metric. But it's really bad across the Horn of Africa, which is Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. So right now, there are almost 20 million people who are facing severe food insecurity. So that basically means that there's not enough food to eat, and they've got rising food prices. In some places, the food has shot up. The basic food basket has shot up 66%. And you're talking about a region where there are many people who are living in extreme poverty, and extreme poverty is defined as people living on $1.25 or less. So when your groceries go up 30, 50, 60, 70%, that means you just don't eat. And so people will end up by eating just one meal a day, and they won't be eating good quality food. I was just in contact with Save the Children, which is on the ground in the region, and the situation is really severe. The metrics are horrifying. So far this year, there are 3 times as many children who are hospitalized with severe malnutrition than all of 2022. So it's really bad. The UN is saying that unless the world shifts its attention from exclusively being focused on Ukraine and start to really pay attention to what's happening in the Horn of Africa, there is going to be an explosion of child death. That's their term, explosion of child death. So we're talking right now that there are close to 400,000 children who are severely acutely malnourished. Means that basically means that they are very close to dying of hunger and malnutrition. So in short, the situation is really bad, and it's getting worse.
Okay, what role is climate change playing in this? What are the experts telling you?
Yeah, so climate change is supercharging everything. I spoke with David Morley, the head of UNICEF Canada, and I put that question to him. I said, we're having these crazy droughts, the worst in 40 years. Are you concerned that we have reached the tipping point where it's no longer possible to respond to these crises in a humanitarian way? And he was very cautious, because he's representing a big organization, but he did say we're in for some very difficult years ahead, because my concern in all of this, and he acknowledged the concerns, is that you have climate change causing these droughts, and so that causes large numbers of people to migrate, so they have to leave their homes in search of food and water, and that means that society becomes unstable. Children are pulled out of school. Families have little choice but to marry their daughters off so that there's one less mouth to feed, and that means basically a life of slavery for the child. Children are being forced to go into child labor because of these rising food prices, and the family needs a little extra money to buy the food. So it's not only a child protection crisis, it's also a child's rights crisis. So that means basically children aren't getting the health care they need. They're being exposed to dangerous situations. Children aren't getting the education they need. And it's only going to get worse in the years to come, because climate change is only intensifying. And the Horn of Africa is prone, even in the best of times, to drought. But the climate change problems are making it much, much worse. And we're going to see in the coming years and decades, a mass migration, because a lot of these places are just going to become unlivable. And this will destabilize the region. And so that means that the international community really has to pay attention to the metrics of famine. And when things start to go bad, we've got to intervene in a substantive way. Now, the good news is there's things that can be done.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you, I mean, there's a G7 meeting happening right now in Germany. These are the wealthiest countries in the world. Is this one of their priorities?
It's on the agenda for today. It's down the list on the agenda today. And as we know, that the war in Ukraine is still the top issue. And I'm not saying the war in Ukraine isn't a big issue, because I'm very concerned about the war in Ukraine. Yes. And it's also generating the food crisis, because Russia is not allowing any agricultural products to be exported, and a lot of the wheat from Ukraine ends up by going to a place like Somalia and Kenya. Like up to 90% of the wheat that goes to the Horn of Africa comes from Russia and Ukraine. So anything that disrupts that is just going to make it much worse. It's not the top issue, but it's going to be in there. Canada has actually made quite a few investments in recent days, but NGOs such as Save the Children would like to see Canada do more. Canada in recent days has made an investment of $250 million in humanitarian response to it, which is great. But Save the Children last year was calling for a $600 million Canadian investment. So things that could be done is that, for example, the food storage is a big problem in Africa, and the agricultural yields are stored improperly, and that means like 30% of the food ends up by being wasted. And so what Canada wants to do is improve food storage, improve Africa's capacity to produce food. So that means investing in our crops that are resilient to climate change and extreme heat and weather, so that Africa can become more self-sufficient. And so this means that Canada is investing in small and medium-sized enterprises in the agri-food business, and part of this money goes to these storage facilities that will make things better. It goes into investing in these seeds that can be resilient to really bad conditions, such as very little water and extreme heat. So there are things that can be done. There's lots of investments in women farmers, because women do a lot, or in some cases most of the farming. So there's stuff we can do instead of. I asked David Morley about this, and he basically said that he's an optimist. He doesn't want to be a pessimist. He said we're in for some very difficult years, but we have to focus more on local leaders in Africa, because there are people all across the continent who are trying to make things better at the local level, and perhaps we should be listening to them more. And I agree, because in the end, there's a lot we can do. We can intervene as an international community, but in the end, Africa's got to decide its own future, and they can do a lot of this with our help.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. I do want to ask you what you thought of the Friday ruling and the weekend of protests. Protests that's certainly not about to end anytime soon over Roe v. Wade, and there may be other rulings along those lines, other cases argued before that court about this. Very clearly, it's a different court, this Supreme Court. Jeffrey, your thoughts, please. In the United States.
Well, I call it an activist court. Usually when you say it's an activist court, you usually think, something that's left-wing. But no, this is, I would call an ultra-right-wing court. During the Trump years, 3 justices were appointed, and there's a question whether they lied during their hearings, because they were asked about Roe v. Wade, in other words, a woman's right to access reproductive care. And they all said that it was settled law, and clearly it was not settled law. So now there are questions whether, should there be impeachment of Supreme Court justices if they lie under oath during these hearings when they're being vetted for these positions. I will say this. I think a woman's right to choose is a basic human right. It's been a basic human right for 50 years in the United States. And when it's taken away, you're going to have massive upheaval and protests in the United States. And when you have half the population being denied a basic human right. And you've got a court that is then talking about possibly moving on to other issues. So Clarence Thomas, in his side opinion on Friday, said that they also have to look at the underlying law that allows a same-sex marriage and same-sex relationships. In other words, he's talking about cracking down on gay relationships. So if a man loves a man, they want to prosecute that. So that would be totally wrong. The court, for the first time in American history, has taken away a woman's right to choose, and now they're talking about possibly taking away the right to same-sex relationships and marriage. And so what I think about all of this is this destroys the legitimacy of the court, and you also have Republican legislatures in the United States at the state level that are passing laws that are targeting the LGBTQ community, and they're also taking away the right to have an abortion. So when you have the Supreme Court and the state legislatures acting against the interests of half of the population, actually more than half of the population when you include the LGBT community, I think the society becomes ungovernable because those democratic institutions have become illegitimate. So I will predict that you will see a summer of unrest. We've already seen many protests across the United States over the weekend. The police have actually gotten rather violent with some of the protesters, which is rather galling because, and they've actually arrested some, because on January 11th, or January 6th, when there was the insurrection, the Trump-led coup, there were no arrests that actual day, and now they're arresting women for protesting peacefully against abortion. So I predict that there's going to be more unrest, and there's going to be, I think, a movement to become more politically active. Excuse me, I've got allergies today. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Jeffrey.
But I think these are rough times ahead.
Turbulent summer, Jeffrey. Fair enough? It's going to be a turbulent summer. Okay. All right. We'll wrap it up there. Claritin, my friend. Claritin. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye. Jeffrey Johnston, international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig Standard. David Sally from the Ottawa Business Journal. Coming up next on City News.
I'm Emily Bertrand, the owner of Royale Equestrian Center. This is Diamond. She's a 10-year-old thoroughbred. She used to be a racehorse and then made the transition to a riding horse. She loves jumping, and she's used for our more advanced students. So we started the farm 14 years ago with my mom and brother. My brother was actually driving by one day and saw the sign, and we applied. There were 60 applicants, and we got it. When we first started, there was not very much here, so our property's about 25 acres, and there was just this 100-year-old barn. And from there, we built onto it. We fixed up one stall at a time, one paddock at a time. We added one horse at a time, and slowly it built into what it is today. Every year, we're improving and trying to continue to build. And most recently, we added 2 shed row barns this year. I love horses. I've been obsessed with horses since I was a little girl. The first time I got to ride, I was 4 years old, and I just loved it. My mom thought it was going to be a phase, and that phase never ended. I kept riding all through high school, and then eventually, started Royale Equestrian Center. It was my dream to always own a farm and to build a place that I could share my passion for horses with others and do the same thing for the kids that the horses did for me. So I absolutely love it. It's a dream come true. COVID hit, that was challenging. I was pretty stressed, especially the first few months, trying to figure out how are we going to navigate all of this. Our business is based on people coming in. We don't make much revenue if there's nobody coming in to ride. So that was really challenging. And then the other aspect of it was how are we going to care for all these horses if we're fully shut down and there's no income coming in. So we worked really hard. Some of our team were so kind to actually just come in and volunteer and help us out. And we made through it. We got through it. It's been hard and a lot of work, but it's also shown us how resilient we can be. So I'm happy with how we're coming out of COVID. Hopefully this is, we're nearing the end of all the shutdowns, but we've, survived it, and now we're starting to thrive again, which is great. So we have a great team. We have about 14 coaches, and then we have all our regular barn staff. We have our maintenance manager and crew, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to do this. It takes a huge amount of people, and then we also have a volunteer program. The volunteer program, it helps with us, especially with our beginner program, so they help with tacking up the horses and caring for the horses when we're really busy, and then they also get to gain some work experience. We take co-op students on. We're quite a busy and vibrant place, and it takes a lot of people to make it work, even through to behind the scenes from our accountants, my family, who are always stepping in to help out. It takes a small village.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So David Sally is back with us from the Ottawa Business Journal, as we always on a Monday morning talk about some of the big local stories in business news. Welcome back, David.
Well, thanks, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. So, it's a weekday for tech on the stock market right now. NASDAQ is down a little bit right now, and we know it's been a tough 2022 for tech shares, generally speaking, and certainly for the jewel of Canada's tech sector, and that is Shopify. Nevertheless, Shopify's down a little bit today, down about 4 1/3%. But it has kind of formed a bottom here. If you're looking at the stock market chart, it has actually rallied quite nicely off of its fresh 52-week low, which was $386, and it's at $475 right now. And in the last month, it's turned positive, and in the last 5 days, it's up about 14%. But it's been brutal. I mean, it's been brutal.
Yeah,
right?
And even so you look at the last month, Robin, it seems that you would think, okay, it's up about 1% or slightly more. So you might think you'd see a nice looking, sort of a prairie type of landscape there when you look at it, but no, it's more like the Rocky Mountains.
Yes,
it's been a bit of a.
That's right.
It really has been a roller coaster, topsy-turvy, whatever metaphor you want to use. You were talking, you and Jeffrey, about turbulence a few minutes ago. Well, I mean, obviously, Shopify has felt that over the last while, and yes, but it is starting to kind of level off a little bit, and the peaks and the troughs aren't quite as steep as they used to be a few months ago. So things may be stabilizing a bit there. It appears.
That's just the stock. That's just the stock, and they're going to have their stock split soon. They've done that. They have this founder share that kind of solidifies Lutke's leadership over the company, and I was reading a quote about him over the weekend where he said, look, when the stock was up 50%, it's not because everybody at Shopify was 50% smarter, and when it's down 50%, it's not because everybody here is 50% dumber. So for him, it's business as usual. Let's not get all wrapped up in the what the stock is doing on any given day, and let's focus on the business and making it a more durable business. He really wants to talk up the offerings, the improvements for the Shopify platform. So I know you're at the Ottawa Business Journal. You've been doing some reporting on that. What's going on there at Shopify?
Yeah, well, absolutely, Rob. So you may remember that Shopify used to do every year this conference called Shopify Unite, and they did it in person, and they. I believe they held it. Oh, I think they've held it in San Francisco. I think they've held it numerous places. It was usually in one city. Well, now they're taking a bit of a different approach. They're holding multiple events in different regions around the world, and one of them was last week. It's a new semi-annual showcase, they're calling it, called Shopify Editions. That was last Wednesday, and basically it was just it was a sort of unveiling. It was kind of like a lay of the land sort of thing of what they've done over the last 6 months in terms of product updates. And there's a few that kind of stand out that they've just announced over the past week. One of them is a partnership with Twitter, in which Shopify is working with Twitter to prominently display products on people's Twitter profiles. So you can, with the idea that it'll make it easier to basically sell products through social media. They're also looking to sync merchants' local inventory with Google so that customers will automatically know when new products are available on merchants' e-commerce sites. There's a new tap to pay offering that they're going to be launching in the U.S. soon. That'll allow merchants to actually do transactions through iPhones. So that's obviously a big deal. It's all of this is designed, of course, to just tap into how people are consuming media these days, Rob. Why not bring e-commerce to where people are most of the time, which is on their phones scrolling, whether it's Twitter or TikTok, which Shopify also has a partnership with, or Instagram, or you name it. So it's all about trying to basically bring that to the forefront, taking e-commerce to consumers instead of making consumers have to go to seek out e-commerce sites. So it's all trying to make it as seamless as they possibly can, and so a lot of this is going to be starting in the U.S. and then rolling out around the world. So it is certainly designed to kind of help in that regard. Also, they are now getting into the NFT space, that's non-fungible tokens, of course, which if you can explain that to me, Rob, please do, exactly how NFTs work.
It's a token, and it's non-fungible.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. What more do you need to know? And they do it through blockchain.
It's done through the blockchain, and Shopify will allow shoppers to connect their NFT wallets to stores using their software. That'll validate that they are in fact the owners of the NFT, and that will, in turn, unlock special perks. They'll get exclusive access to other products and shops and all kinds of things. So really, you can see Shopify is trying to make sure it stays on top of all these latest trends, right? So we'll see how that goes.
Well, the market is starting to like it, because it was brutal. It was brutal. So it's nice to see Shopify is turning the corner. It's turning the corner, and at least with the share price, But it's always been, it's been very well positioned, right? You still have to think, what's the value proposition here? Do you think e-commerce is going to be a thing in the future? Okay.
Right.
You think and if that value proposition is still yes, I do think so, then I think Shopify's in a pretty good space for you.
I do too, and as you mentioned earlier, and that's been what Toby has been. I mean, he's been preaching that. He's been driving home that message almost right from the start. That this is he wants to build a 100-year company here. This is not. He's not worried about. I'm sure he's not. He doesn't have the stock chart up there on his laptop. I'm sure he's not wringing his hands every time there's a dip. It's all about it's a long-term play, and in the long run, he feels like, as we've talked about, e-commerce, it's only going to keep growing, and Shopify has done a really good job at continuing to it's not stagnant. It's constantly trying to introduce new options, make it easier for people to connect to e-commerce, and no doubt, if we know anything about Toby, he'll never rest. He's not going to rest on his laurels, and Shopify is going to keep trying to be a trailblazer in this area. So
excellent. Yeah. Okay. Always interesting to have the benefit of your reporting on the Shopify story, David. Thank you so much for this week.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, great to hear from you again. David Sally from the Ottawa Business Journal. The news is next, and this is City News.
Today is a very exciting day. We are officially opening the Interzip Rogers for the summer season of of this year. Last year, we were expecting to have maybe 20,000 people, and we actually had over 30,000 riders for the first year. So we're really excited to reopen this year.
That was epic and scary!
You have a really different perspective view-wise of the area we're in. So you have a clear view of the Parliament. Obviously, you're crossing the river, and of course, you're moving from a province to another, which is unique of this zip line. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Rogers has been partners even before Interzip opened, actually. They were all in the first meeting we had with Rogers, and that for us was really a nice commitment. We're really fortunate to have Rogers with us, and on top of having Rogers, it's basically the name of the zipline, which is the Interzip Rogers, that is now pretty much renowned across the country.
Rogers Interzip is a great activity for people who live in or visit the National Capital Region. Get out and have an opportunity to zip across the Ottawa River between Ottawa and Outaouais.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 27th. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, mainly sunny skies and 22 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. With Canada Day celebrations just 4 days away, city officials are vowing not to allow a repeat of the first convoy. Ottawa's Mayor Jim Watson says anyone who comes to Ottawa to disrupt celebrations will face the full force of the law. He adds there will be no warnings and no second chances this time. Interim Ottawa Police Chief Steve Bell says OPS has developed options for multiple scenarios and that they're reaching out to police partners to gather the resources necessary. City Councillor for Somerset Ward, Catherine McKenney, says their main concern is for the safety of Ottawa residents. McKenney says they've also been assured that if necessary, more street closures are ready to be rolled out in any areas not yet covered by the exclusionary zone for Canada Day. For folks wanting to visit the Gatineau Park this summer, you can now travel there for free. The NCC is providing a free shuttle bus to transport you to and from the park. The shuttle will run every half hour between 9 a.m. and 4:45 every weekend until August 28th. It will depart from downtown Ottawa at Wellington and Lyon Streets and from the Canadian Museum of History in Quebec. And Ottawa Police is asking for help locating a missing teenager. 16-year-old Dominique Rowe Van Buren was last seen on June 21st at about 6:50 a.m. He was at a residence in Orleans. He's described as Caucasian, short blonde, brownish hair, 5'7", and about 205 pounds with a muscular build. Anyone with information of Dominique's whereabouts is asked to contact police as soon as possible. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Danielle Bain for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
One of the developing international stories that we will be following is a report that NATO, and of course Canada is part of NATO plans to massively increase what's known as its high readiness force to numbers of around 300,000 personnel. This is news that comes ahead of a NATO summit, which is scheduled to take place in Madrid later this week. That force, the high readiness force, is currently 40,000. And early reports indicate NATO will expand troop deployments across the member countries that are closest to Russia, and that the force would also be named the Allied reaction force. So that is news that broke around 8 o'clock this morning. So very interesting story that is certainly worthy of some follow-up and some analysis. And to help us do that, we have Assistant Professor of Political Science at the University of Ottawa, Jean-Francois Rattel, joining us on City News. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
How significant is this news?
I think it shows that the priorities in terms of NATO challenges and NATO strategic concept are changing now. It is important because this task force or this force to react is aimed at potential threat coming from the immediate neighborhood in Europe. So Russia most likely maybe threat against Lithuania, over Romania, or even in the Baltic states, but also more broadly outside of Europe. We're talking maybe in North Africa, or even with the rise of China as a global competitor far in the Pacific for NATO.
So we're talking about an 8-fold increase.
Yes, that would mean that there is a perception of threat that is growing with the war in Ukraine, with the potential spillover to the NATO neighborhood regions, and also the threat that Russia is maybe trying to expand some of its hybrid forces or hybrid warfare, let's say in the Western Balkans. There's a perception that in the last 10 years, maybe, the threat with regard for NATO has been changing from a transnational threat, let's say, about terrorism, to the competition with major states like Russia, China, and in different regions of the world.
Okay. How likely is it that this could be perceived, particularly by Russia, right now, as an escalation? What do you think about that?
Well, obviously, if you have forces that are ready to react by your border, it is perceived as a threat from any state. At the same time, this force is not aimed for offensive purposes against Russia directly or against Russia's allies like Belarus. It is a force that is to enforce the principle of collective security in NATO. So in terms of perception, Russia will see it negatively. But overall, it doesn't mean that we're moving to a different stage in terms of the tension between Russia and NATO than we are right now with Ukraine, and we can call it almost a proxy war between NATO and Russia on the Ukrainian territory.
Okay. Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General, has called this the biggest overhaul of collective defense and deterrence since the Cold War. Can you put this number 300,000 into that kind of historical perspective for us, please?
Well, throughout the Cold War, we were expecting a war in Europe between Russia, Soviet Union, and NATO. So the collective force was really had to be in constant alert in case of this war. After the Cold War, it was drastically reduced because the threat of a war in Europe was very low, even inexistent, and other threats in the world were more important. We're talking about transnational terrorism, civil wars in Central Africa or in the Balkans, threats that were not linked to state competition or strategic competition as NATO is talking about now. But more recently, the threat of direct confrontation between NATO and major powers like Russia and China has escalated in a significant manner. So when we're looking in perspective, we are not yet in a level of alert or mobilization as we were in the Cold War, but at the same time, we are in a paradigm shift in a way compared what it was early in the 1990s or even early 2000s.
Okay. I'm just wondering, this number, I'm kind of focused on this 300,000 personnel, 300,000. You just don't send them to countries and stick them in tents. They must be accompanied by hardware, I'm guessing, Professor, whether that's weapon systems or aircraft or on ships. What would this mean on the armament front?
Certainly. In terms of manpower, it is significant because it would be more than what Russia has right now mobilized for its war in Ukraine. So it's important. In terms of hardware, we see a modernization of many Eastern European member states of NATO buying and upgrading their military hardware in order to prepare for a potential conflict or spill over the war in Ukraine. At the same time, Russia reacted by saying that they would be willing to move nuclear forces into Belarus to increase their range or their threat against potential NATO activities in the north or even on the European territory. So to answer your question more directly, if we're talking about 300,000 troops on this rapid force, then you're talking about very modern military hardware that could be deployed almost immediately in terms of a crisis in Europe or also somewhere else. Okay. For example, as I was discussing earlier, in the Middle East or even in Northern Africa, where China and Russia has been more active, what we can see as the south border of NATO in a way.
Okay, so Canada has what's known as Operation Reassurance. Almost 1,400 Canadian Armed Forces members deployed as part of that. They've been in Latvia since 2014 at Camp Adazi. The Minister of National Defense has said there's the capability to deploy as many as 3,400 personnel. What would this mean for Canada? Well, if we deployed them as a preventive strategy, let's say to contribute to NATO, it means a major investment, but at the same time, it's not an engagement into an active military engagement in Europe. However, if it would be about Russia getting involved, let's say in Latvia, that example, or any other Baltic countries, it would mean that Canada engage in a war directly against Russia among NATO allies. So for the moment, it is part of Canada's commitment to NATO of collective security and self-defense. At the same time, as we were mentioning earlier, it's a force that can escalate into a conflict extremely rapidly in the spirit of threat changing, becoming very diverse in these days, whether from hybrid warfare to even potentially now interstate conflict that we've seen in Ukraine, for example, or in Georgia in 2008. Okay, very interesting. Thank you for your analysis on this very important story, Professor. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Jean-Francois Rattel from the Political Science Department at the University of Ottawa. Money Monday coming up next with Peter Fraser from Cardinal Planning and Manulife Securities Incorporated here in Ottawa on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It's so important, and I know I do come on and I talk about this a lot, but every 60 seconds somebody in Canada needs blood, and so it's important to keep reinstilling the message of donating and continuing to get new blood donors to come into our system to support. We have 1 in 2 Canadians who are in need of blood at any given time, but only 1 in 81 people actually donate. So we need to improve those statistics.
Yeah, and helping to improve those statistics, you guys are always coming up with new campaigns, and you've got a new campaign now. Tell me about the campaign.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I'm happy to. You know, it's kind of about Canadians. We sacrifice everything for people we know and for people we don't. Canadians show up for other Canadians, and we do this out of the goodness of our heart. And right now, especially right now, through the pandemic and you know, the winter months and the snowstorms, we've had a lot of canceled appointments. We've had you know, a decline in the number of people who are able to show up for their appointments. And right now, what we really need is for everybody who's eligible to hear the call to show up for patients. So patients in Canada need blood. We want you to show up. We want you to say we're here for you. And with currently only 4% of Canadians who donate blood, we want more people to show up and improve those numbers and really make sure that the hospital patients are comfortable and that they know that blood will always be there for them when and where they need it.
Yeah, and Jan, you mentioned the pandemic, right? And you know, that probably, you know, as you said, had it's one of the biggest reasons why people perhaps have stopped. But you do have health and safety protocols, and we want to encourage people and let them know that those health and safety protocols remain in place. Let's talk a little bit about those.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, our workforce, our volunteers, everybody who works within the blood donor clinic is fully vaccinated. And we have many wellness procedures throughout, step by step. If you donated through the pandemic, you'll notice the distancing, you'll notice the wellness stations, the health checks at the front end, some more eligibility criteria, as you can imagine. But all of it is just to make sure that the experience itself is safe and reliable. And now we need people to come in and go through that process with us so that the end outcome, again, is that lovely unit of blood going to a hospital somewhere to help a patient.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, returns with Peter Fraser for Money Monday. Peter is with Cardinal Planning and is Associate Portfolio Manager at Manulife Securities Incorporated here in Ottawa. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. We've made it to summer. Made it to halfway through the year as well. Okay.
Yeah, I thought 6 months to Boxing Day yesterday, apropos of nothing.
6 months to Boxing Day. All right. I'll go through these really quick. Okay, this is where we are halfway through the year on the markets.
Right.
But don't worry, you have a plan because you listen to Peter Fraser. TSX is actually the best performer of all the indices. It's only down 9%. The Dow is down 13% year to date. The NASDAQ is down 26% year to date. And the S&P 500 is down 18% year to date. But again, you have a plan. You have a plan. Let's hope. Not too many people have plans. That's the problem. Right, Peter? 4%? 4%?
Yeah.
Wow.
Plan to talk about that for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
A couple of weeks back, we introed FP Canada, and that was the organization that accredits financial planners in this country. We talked a little bit about their holistic, integrated planning protocols, and it's an asset, in my view, an asset that, like you say, is called the financial plan, and that only 1 out of 3 Canadians work with a financial professional, and only 4% actually have a plan. So there's 96% of the people listening that we may be making this presentation for.
That's an untapped market for you, Peter Fraser.
There you go. But basically, 2/3 of the country are either not working with somebody or not working on a plan. So, we talked about these components at that time, just helping to be able to mute some of this serious market turbulence like you've just described. And so far, nobody's immune from it, and just the impact of how that can help drive down stress. So in that vein, this same organization just released a 2022 study. I've got it up on cardinalplanning.ca, but it's what they call their financial stress index.
Okay.
And I thought we could spend a couple of minutes just talking about what 2,000 odd Canadians disclosed to the people taking the survey. So,
okay, go ahead.
Well, 4 in 10 say that money is now the largest source of stress in their lives today. And I thought that was interesting because it surpasses personal health, work, and even relationship stresses.
Wow.
And that's the number for people who don't work with a financial professional or a plan. So out of those that do, that stress factor actually drops by quite a bit, from 40 down to 15%. So we're all being forced through a time of rethinking some of these personal financial rules. We've leaned on an extended period of low interest rates. And I thought it was interesting that the study says, confirms some things I'm seeing, but that, the stress is resulting in some what I call new normals emerging. And wanted to share maybe 2 or 3 of those, sort of some stress-reducing pivots that are quite actively underway.
Like if money is stressing you out, here's what could reduce your stress levels, in other words.
Well, in fact, here's what people are doing, and some of them sound a little bit self-evident, but people are saving more. Almost 50% of people told the surveyors that they're building back up their savings, or they're just setting stuff aside, and that helps them reduce stress. 38% of people said they're paying down debt. And 81% said that they're engaging in a combination of driving up the value of their emergency funds, either revising or building a first spending plan. And certainly, most of us are evaluating expenses in a time of rapidly rising costs. But something I wasn't expecting to find was that a fifth of the respondents, 20% of the people, say they intend to get advice for the first time from somebody to help deal specifically with financial stress. So I thought that was interesting.
Okay. So they are seeking help, in other words.
They are.
Right.
And I want to just leave a few more things. We've been conditioned in the last couple of decades to just use as an affordability measure the monthly payment number, right? How much can you carry? And of course, people are learning for the first time to have to create breathing room for these rapidly rising payments. And so, when you, I think you referenced this a couple of weeks back, but a quarter of homeowners say that they would actually have to consider selling their home if rates climb much higher. So, the planning application of creating some space for what we now know are some potentially rising costs on certain things like a variable rate mortgage, but that's an important de-stressor when you kind of lay it out and look at how you'll work around that. The other thing I want to talk about was just this fleeing to safety that's also going on. Of course, it's nice to maybe leave the markets and those negative returns you talked about, but even GICs and savings accounts, I think, offer an unexpected new stressor in that, when you stack up, I think last week was 7.7 inflation in the country.
Yes.
You plug that into maybe 2% on the GIC, and you're still driving a minus real return.
Yes, but it's interesting because I was specifically hoping you would bring up the GIC example, guaranteed income certificate, GIC. That's right. Guaranteed investment certificate, right? That's what that means. Guaranteed investment certificate. You invest this much money, we guarantee you this much on your investment. Very popular. It's like they're back in vogue or something now. I see them advertised everywhere, Peter.
Yep.
You're saying, how are you advising clients? You surely must be getting inquiries about these, Peter.
Well, I think there's probably a transition. There's a place for it to be a transition, but I think it's really important to remember that with inflation rates where they are right now, at any rate, you can't not consider that even that parking spot is costing you money. I've always said about a GIC, it's a guarantee that you won't be making all the money there is to be made on it, either in a high interest rate environment or low. But
interesting. Okay.
So, specifically in this study, though, Rob, they've not mentioned investments or things like better returns. And, I think if you drill down a little more deeply into it, you look at things like anxiety and depression and mental health issues. They're all getting worse, apparently, due to the financial stress that people are experiencing. So I just wanted to posit that I think, talking with someone, working with someone, planning with someone, they help to drive down some of these negative impacts to the times that we're all going through.
Right.
And with 39% of the country saying they have less income to spend this year than last, I think a plan and a relationship are pretty good tools to help navigate the storm and obviously drive down stress. So
because you are building a relationship.
I think so, and
and you've talked about how important it is that when you have, there are going to be times when you have conversations and you're going to want the whole family in the room to have these conversations, right?
I think so, and I think it's worth reiterating. A plan is not the domain solely of rich people. Like, a good plan is for anybody, and I think this financial stress study confirms there are some good benefits that come when you've got a plan and somebody to talk to about it. So.
Okay. So again, for more information, you can direct us to
cardinalplanning.ca is where the copy of this stress index is, along with the other resources that we often talk about together.
Excellent. All right, Peter. Great
happy
stuff
Canada
this week.
Day, Rob.
Yeah, happy Canada Day to you. And if you are taking some time off, I know it's that time of year. Sometimes I'm away and sometimes you're away, but we'll get through it together.
We will.
All right. Thank you again, Peter Fraser from Manulife Securities, where he is Associate Portfolio Manager, and Cardinal Planning, cardinalplanning.ca for Money Monday. So coming up, it's the Sam LaPrade Show after the noon news. Just kind of looking through here. What does Sam... I mentioned the Distress Center. The calls are up at the Distress Center because of financial stress. There is too much a month left over at the end of the money for some people. And Leslie Scott is with the Distress Center of Ottawa. So she will be speaking with Sam right after the news, as well as Wendy Mitchell from Shelter Movers Ottawa. They're expanding operations into rural areas around Ottawa. More on the situation at the airports if you've been listening to Sam. Sam does a lot of traveling. She was recently in Vegas, for example, and she has shared some of her experiences, shall we say, with trying to get through Pearson and everything else that has been on the news. CBSA, the union, is Customs and Immigration Union, the CIU, and Mark Weber is the national president of that union, and he will share some of his thoughts on the long wait times for travelers that people are experiencing. So all of that is ahead on the Sam LaPrade Show. It's coming up right after our full noon news update. I'm back after the 9 o'clock news tomorrow morning. Don't forget the Talkback Hour at 10 on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Tune in weekdays starting at 9 on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.